OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Very good morning to you. Welcome along. Gilroy, Nathan Murphy with you all the way through until 10 a.m. this morning. We'd love to hear from you. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number. If you want to get anything off your chest, you can use the hashtag OTBAM on Twitter. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream for us here this morning. We've got a very busy show. Alan Quinlan is going to talk to us about rugby. Cunningham is going to join us in studio. We look back at all the weekend's football. We have the Gillette Pressure Rankings, and we've loads more besides coming up between now and 10. The best place to listen to us these days, by the way, is on the OTB Sports app. Just search OTB Sports in the App Store. You can download it there, and that's also the best place to get tickets for our forthcoming events and everything else that we do, all our podcasts on the podcast network as well. Let's bring you this first. It is Brian Kerr talking about Spurs against Everton. Before that, though, we're going to hear from Michael Byrne and Kieran Cunningham on the pay-per-view. Have a look.
So we're back up and running with the Premier League, and that rarest of things, an Everton victory at Spurs. First time in a dozen years, a 1-0 win. Brian Kerr was alongside me watching it, and a lot to like from that Everton performance.
Yeah, very good. Composed at the back, well organised, no errors, not one error in the match. In the back four, the goalkeeper, Pickford, played very well. I would have said totally in control in the midfield area. Alan, Rodriguez, very good. Decore, very good. Andre Gomez, very good. And then Richarlison was a threat the whole game. Calvert-Lewin got a magnificent goal. And they were the better team by far today, and a bit of hope for Everton fans who may have been disappointed, well, would have been disappointed last season, finished 12th, and also wondered what they were getting with the players that they've signed. People would know Decore, but he wasn't a standout player in the Premier League. He was someone that I have to say I liked. When I watched Watford, I always thought he looked a player capable of playing for a better side. Alan was one that, unless you watched a fair bit of Italian football or Napoli in the Champions League this season, maybe a lot of people wouldn't have known him that well, but he was superb today. James Rodriguez, obviously been around a bit, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Monaco in the past, great World Cup in 2014, but hasn't done a huge amount since. You know?
Well, he was the one today because, listen, it's one game and Everton fans have had their fair share of false stones and seen any amount of players come in and huge money being spent, and it hasn't worked out for them. And they end up in a position last season where, as you say, like, it's their worst finish, I think, in 16 seasons. But you've got the energy of Decore, Alan technically looked very good. But James Rodriguez was probably the most intriguing signing of the off-season of any club, in that, like, 2014, people are talking him up as being one of the best players in the world, and hasn't quite happened. But, geez, there were signs there today that...
Well, you can see he has special ability. I mean, it was his goal scoring at the World Cup in 2014, remember. But you could see his technical ability and awareness of where he was on the pitch and what was on, what pass was on, and where his teammates were. I mean, the number of times he picked her up on the right-hand side in space, it's never seemed to be a Spurs player tight enough to him to affect him. He was able to pick out Richarlison numerous times with crossfield passes, but his combinations also with Alan and Andre Gomez were very good. Decore gave energy and mobility in that area of the pitch. But it was an exciting signing, and he wasn't far away from scoring. He had a couple of shots, one saved, one just outside the post as well. He tried to core with his left foot. So you can see him getting goals, and you can see him adding to the creativity that Everton have missed. I mean, not alone last year they finished 12th. You have to remember that before Ancelotti came in, they were down scrapping near the relegation zone at Christmas.
Yeah, and I guess before Everton fans get carried away as well, they won't have many matches where that midfield will probably have it quite so easy. Firstly, teams will be aware of them, but Spurs were miles off it today.
Yeah, I'd make some allowance for them, Nathan, in that it's the week, a very uncomfortable week for the managers of the clubs in the Premier League, with so many other players away playing in international football. And if you look at Spurs starting team, there was a fair few of them. I mean, Davies would have been playing for Wales, and Eric Dyer was away playing. Alderweireld also Belgium. Look, Winks wasn't. Højbjerg was. The attacking positions, then Caelan certainly was. I'm not sure whether Moura was away, but you know, it's an awkward one for managers because it's such an important week where you're juggling the team in your head, and you get to the stage where you know the team you want to play, and then they're all gone away, and you can't work with them on the pattern of play and the tactics you want to use against the opposition. The opposition that you know you're going to play against, and then you're waiting on them to come back. And then they come back, and some of them have little knocks, and they're probably getting treatment, and it's hard to put the team out on the pitch and do the shape work that you'd like to do. That is the one kind of excuse I'd give for Spurs about the performance, because it was disjointed. The Højbjerg didn't seem to particularly know what his role was. Matt Doherty, as the other new player, knew what his role was, and he played, I would say, okay. He had a hard time against Richarlison. He almost scored in the first half. Defensively, in a 4, does he know how to do it well enough to be good enough for Spurs? That remains to be seen.
Football moves on quite quickly, and maybe it's unfair to compare this team to Spurs at their best under Pochettino, but when you're going through the players there, like Davies now compared to Danny Rose at his best, Dyer at centre half compared to Vertonghen, Winks compared to Moussa Dembele. Quality wise, can they achieve much this season? Is that a Tottenham team you go, you know what, they've got the players there to finish top 4, or do they need a bit more?
Well, they had last year they started the season badly with the team that were in the Champions League final. Let's sum it up. The Champions League final, they got there a bit fortunate to get there, finished fourth in the Premier League, as well as getting to the Champions League final. There was very little happened in terms of team. Almost the same team started last season. And Dembele was the one big signing, brought in 50 or 60 million. You know, you've the likes of Sessegnon come in from Fulham, Gelson Fernandez come in, and those players have added nothing to what they had. I mean, it ended up that the same players were playing with Eriksson still in among the mix, until it was decided that Eriksson was gone and there wasn't much sense in playing him. So they had a very average season last year. I mean, they were knocked out of the League Cup by Colchester, knocked out of the FA Cup by Norwich, knocked out of the Champions League by Leipzig, 4-0 aggregate without really getting a kick of the ball in either match. February, March were very poor last year, and that's under Mourinho. Then we had the long break. They come back in July, and they picked up a bit. Some players were back fit again. They hadn't been playing. Harry Kane been out injured, and they were better in that period, but not miles better. It was often counter-attack football, and using the pace of Son and Moura and Harry Kane's brilliance and ability to score goals. But I could never have said that I was very impressed by Tottenham last year.
Anyway, we were interrupted by an alarm there. Sorry, Brian.
Yeah. So, you know, looking back at Spurs and looking at the Spurs season, that long season of however long it went, I think it went for a full year. They come back and they had better results. I think it was 5-3-1 over the last 9 games of the regroup season. But I wasn't fierce impressed with them. They signed 2 players, both of whom are steady Premier League players. We'll have to wait and see how they do as time goes on. You know, it's too early to be making big judgments.
Make a big judgment.
How
long will Mourinho last?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, listening to him himself, he said that if you judge his season from the time when he came in, they finished 4th last year. All Spurs supporters will be happy if they finish 4th this year. But on the performance today, they're well short of that. But look, you know, let's wait and see how it develops over the next few weeks. Busy time, the 9 games, the next 22 games, next 22 days, 9 games. They should be capable, even with their second team, of winning those Europa League matches and maybe the League Cup match. they need to get points in the Premier League with the games they have coming up. But it's Southampton, Newcastle, Manchester United in that period. They're the games that they've got to get points in.
I've no doubt when you go home tonight in your unofficial role as, godfather of Irish football, the call will come from Stephen Kenny. You are watching the game, Brian. Seamus Coleman against Matt Doherty. The big decision he's going to face. Does he watch that game, like, thinking back, he's a different man, he's a different manager, but if you're watching that game and you have a big decision to make, are you reading anything into Seamus Coleman and Matt Doherty's performances? And if you are, what did you see today in terms of Ireland?
Well, I would think there's very little that Stephen Kenny didn't know in advance of his selection for the match with Bulgaria, that he didn't know already, that he learned today. But still, he decided to pick Matt Doherty for his first international, and for his second international against Finland. The key match for us all was obviously the Slovakia game. While Stephen made grandiose statements about the importance of the Nations League and ranking points and all those things that are kind of relevant, the Slovakia match is the one that really matters. So I think for all the players who were in the squad, he played, I think, 18 players over the 2 games. He would have had a good look at them in match conditions against reasonable, not great opposition, but Finland proved they're a decent side. And I think I said in an interview with Joe Malloy before Stephen's first match that every international match can be very difficult, that every country gets the best manager they can to run the team. He picks the best players he possibly can and puts them out with a tactical shape and plan that he thinks are going to get them results, and maybe a style of play, particular style of play to achieve those results. We saw that with Bulgaria, a team that haven't been in very good form, I think they'd won very few games in the last 10 games. We saw with Finland why they have qualified for the European finals. They won 6, lost 4 in the group. Good ability. So Stephen learned a lot in that time. Now he has a month to make his mind up about what the best team is to play in the way he wants them to play, in the shape he wants them to play against Slovakia. And I would allow him to make that decision. He's the best man in the circumstances to do that. But looking at today, if it was my judgment, Seamus Coleman was the better right back in a 4 from a defensive point of view. If that's what you want, a right back to defend in that area of the pitch and attack when the opportunity arises. But Stephen may have a different vision for what he wants from his right back and his left back. When you look at the positions, the average positions of Enda Stevens and Matt Doherty in the 2 games so far, they were in advanced positions up around the halfway line in both games. If Stephen wants them to start there, maybe he feels that Matt Doherty is better than that. I would like my right back maybe not to start quite so far and to be in touch with his centre backs in terms of as a defensive unit playing against Slovakia.
Yeah, and we might be looking back on this game totally different if Jordan Pickford hadn't made that brilliant save from Matt Doherty and he got a debut goal. But listen, it's no surprise to anyone that Seamus Coleman ain't going anywhere without a bit of a fight for his Irish place. Just to wrap up the weekend, because next week our live game on Sunday is Liverpool against Chelsea. It'll do well to match Liverpool Leeds last night 4-3. Liverpool conceded a lot of goals after the restart. We sort of put it down to they had the title won, they were just slightly off, but when they're at it, they're going to be at it. Like Virgil van Dijk's performance getting a lot of criticism, that bit of casualness, maybe a bit of arrogance creeping in. Were there signs there that you would see that in Liverpool?
There's signs for everyone and hope for everyone that got battered by Liverpool last year that they may not be as good this season. There's a couple of things come into my mind about last night's game. One is that the fear factor and the edge that Liverpool had in playing at Anfield, the home matches last year, is out the window for this season. They had the league won by the time the league restarted last year. It was almost won. They just need to get a few points. But when you think back on the earlier part of the season, up to March, up to the close down, and what it was like for the opposition, how good Liverpool were at home, battering teams, even matches that look like slipping away from them, could turn it around if they go to. You knew the crowd and the surge behind them when the momentum goes. They won't have that back in this year. They've got the same team, just signed an extra left back, the Greek lad, who's impressive looking player. I like the look from Greece and with Olympiacos. But, you know, they've not added any extra players in midfield. Can the front three do it again for fourth season in a row? It'll be interesting to see how it goes. I think there's every chance that's going to be much more even this year, and that I think the fact that there's no fans in the grounds will be a leveler. Home and away teams will be able to go and take every team on away from home who have that image of it's a hard place to go. You know, that like Old Trafford, a hard place to go. Away to Chelsea, hard place to go. Stamford Bridge, all that. Manchester City, everyone will go there. I think we'll see an evening out of that home and away influence, let's say. So, you know, Liverpool conceded 3 goals last night. We're still able to pull out a 4th goal. Lucky to get a penalty at the end. But, you know, certainly hope for other teams that they're not going to be miles ahead of everyone else this year. And they won't be, because Manchester City have to be better. Chelsea are certainly going to be better. And Manchester United are going to be better. To mention just 3.
Great stuff, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan.
Moving on to the Sunday Times. Dennis Walsh, when you get him writing about Cork hurling, you're always pretty much onto a winner. Kieran, you wanted to bring this one up. It basically is a story centering around one of those great figures in Cork hurling going back decades now at this stage. First walked into a Cork dressing room as a young doctor in 1976. Dr. Colm Murphy seemed to be one of those ever-present figures for decades pretty much, and brought back and given his due shine today in the Sunday Times by Dennis Walsh.
Yeah, because actually, I think Dennis mentions he's 70. I thought Dr. Conn was actually older because he's been around so long, because he was involved in the 3 in a row with Cork in the mid-70s, which would mean he was only like early 20s then. Like, he was just a newly qualified doctor. I didn't realise he was so young back then. But he mentions the time about then because Christy Ring, there's actually a great photo of Christy Ring, who was a selector back then, and Jimmy Barry Murphy was obviously the star player, but talking to him, like, it's 2 absolutely iconic figures captured in the same photo. But he just talks about when they were coming out for one of the games, and just Christy Ring roared, "We are Cork, we are Cork."
We're from Cork. We're from Cork. And like,
he talked about this a few years ago. I think it's when Cork managed to get one over in Clare, and I think it might have been 99, the year that young Cork team won the All-Ireland. He said Donald Cusick and the parade was just roaring, "We are Cork, we are Cork." So this is an echo of what Christy Ring did back in the.
And just like it's so brilliantly woven, because there's talk of Christy Ring and how who was it? John Fitzgibbon wanted to emulate Christy Ring if he scored a goal against Galway in the 1990 hurling final, but as Dennis writes, by half time nothing was further from their minds. Galway were 5 points up and flying. Cork had spluttered to the end of the runway without leaving the ground. Mulcahy, this is a brilliant image. Mulcahy joined Con in the dressing room toilets where they were hosting a pop-up clinic at half-time. Cashman followed them in bewildered. Joe Cooney had run a drag with the Cork centre-back, and he was looking at Con with pleading eyes. I said to him, "I can guarantee you he won't keep it up." That was the best I could think of. And lo and behold, they go on and secure the double. But like, just a remarkable vignette of what that Cork dressing room was like. The fact that they felt they had to hold a subcommittee meeting in the jacks of the dressing room at half-time, and that was the cure for all. It seems that, and a couple of goals for John Fitzgibbon as well in the second half. But like, just a remarkable piece of storytelling, and one of those mythic figures, I guess, in Cork hurling and GA circles as a whole.
Yeah, there's another great story, Richie. It's about another ring story. Obviously, some of the nostalgia has probably been done to death during COVID, because a lot of people got to do look back pieces. But stuff like this, I think, is absolutely timeless, and it doesn't matter. Any amount of nostalgia will not make you not like this piece anymore. So he just says, in the early years, on-field injuries were mostly treated in private. In his first 10 years with Cork, he can only remember running onto the field once in Croke Park. But in the warm-up for the 1997 final, Shawnee O'Leary's nose was smashed by a stray slitter. His nose was half grit way across his face. Dr. Conn said, "Ringy came in, which was not a help. He was stuffing things up his nose, and eventually he said, 'Leary, you won't be hurling with your nose.'" Shawnee O'Leary started the game and he stayed the course. I think he got a goal the same day as well. But that's just great stuff. Like, talking about Dr. Khan, and Dr. Khan is almost highlighting again just how revered Christy Ring was as well. And basically, like if Ring told them to do anything, they would do it. No more than that, we are from Cork. If Ring said you're able to play, you were able to play. And someone like Dr. Khan would be perfect for a book, because he's universally loved by all. Was on 3 or 4, I think, international rules teams. Went to Australia, working with them, and even like Tomás O'Shea and all the Kerry lads, who generally would hate Cork people anyway, on the pitch anyway, they all love him. And just some great stories looking back through the years.
Yeah, there's a brilliant one as well here. There's so many in it. In what is a relatively small piece as well, Kieran. He says, before the 1999 All-Ireland, Jimmy Barry Murphy wanted to do something similar on the day of the final, and he asked Con to canvass his rugby contacts for ideas. Donald Lenihan was one of his oldest friends, and between them they came up with something. We decided that Jimmy would stand at the top of the dressing room, and each fellow would come up and he'd present them with their jersey. By the time he got to the last jersey, everybody in the room was crying. Jimmy said, "What do you think of that?" I said, "We're either heroes or it's just cost us the match." It's just, there's such remarkable stuff in it. But he mentions as well the wars that went on in the 90s and elsewhere in Cork hurling, and the strikes, and how he was rang by Don Lowe Cusack asking him to intervene, and he said he couldn't. Don Lowe said, "You're the only guy who can solve it." I said, "I'm not prepared to take the stress of that. I'm not your man." I couldn't sleep that night, and at 3 a.m. a text arrived from Don Lowe saying, "Yo, it's nothing, sorry for asking." But it shows how intertwined he was in the very fabric of Cork GEA that he mentions.
Yeah, you sometimes find somebody who's everybody's friend is nobody's friend. They're just too nice. They think, how can you just get on with everybody? But Dr. Khan is one of the exceptions, that everybody seemed to warrant him. It's mentioned there that the players loved him, that various managers and backroom teams loved him. He got on very well with Frank Murphy, who was such a dominant figure in Cork for hurling for so long. And these were all. He got on with people who were sometimes at war with each other, and he minded about the appetite for conflict, or just as a genuinely nice man, he just wanted to get on with people. But it's interesting. He talks about how the impact of COVID on himself, because he is, as he says, such a people person. And he found it hard, his 3 sons waving through the window at him, that they weren't able to visit him, and he said it did affect his own mental health. We'd written about it. He talked to somebody in an interview with it a few months before that it would impact on people's mental health. He didn't really expect it would impact on his own, but he says he found the whole isolation part of it very difficult.
It touches on something as well, this, like, we get a sense of, and I know something here that you're liable to take the piss out of at any moment, which is that word Corkness. But we do see it written through this piece, in that there's something different about them down there in Cork, to put it mildly. There is that intangible in the air that has made the difference.
I genuinely think there is such a thing. There's Sean O'Phelan, the short story writers in Cork, and he had something about, Cork, they've flint, they've spark, the spark of fire, they've steel in them, and the smilers are the worst. And I've often found that with Cork, the smilers are the worst. But they are very, you look at the personalities of people as diverse in ways. There's one O'Gara, Roy Keane, Sonia Sullivan, Dermot O'Rourke, Vincent O'Brien and the horse racing back in the day. And there are similarities. Christy Ring, if you read about him, is the personality most akin to Roy Keane, if anyone you come across. Like, if you read what he used to say, it could be Roy Keane talking. And it does seem to have contrariness and a drive, a pride in the place that sets it apart. That's why that really highlights, going 15 years without a hurling all-Ireland. It's just, it doesn't sit well with Corkness. That's for sure.
Is it like an almost tangible thing? Mick, you would have noticed it more in the field, I guess, than the rest of us.
Yeah, the only word I can use to describe it, and it's not accurate, but there is a type of arrogance, and I don't mean that in a necessarily bad way. It's a swagger, this kind of a confidence about them, probably I don't know what you call it, a superiority complex, and they do kind of buy into that, and that's why, as Kieran said, it must be very, very difficult to take that it's 15 years since they've won a football, or since they won a hurling All-Ireland, 10 years since they've won a football All-Ireland. But there is just something about them, that kind of innate confidence that they have, and it's hard, very, very. It's one of these things that's very, very hard to describe, but it is definitely there.
Yeah. Mick, anything else you wanted to bring up? I know you wanted to touch on a bit of racing before we shut off.
Yeah, massive weekend of racing. Irish Champions weekend, obviously on today, but just the O'Brien dynasty, I just like to touch on again. Aidan O'Brien won the Irish Champion Stakes yesterday. Magical beat the world's highest rated horse in Guyot yesterday. It was Ballydoyle beating Godolphin, or Coolmore beating Godolphin, which is another massive one. But Joseph O'Brien, who's still only 27, and it's amazing to think what he's achieved outside of the saddle already. He won the English St. Ledger yesterday, and there's so many little kind of lines into that story. Shane Cross, who's an apprentice jockey who's gotten on unbelievably well with Joseph in the last couple of years. He was champion apprentice in 2018. He actually tested positive for COVID on Friday. He was asymptomatic. He wasn't showing any symptoms or anything like that, so he couldn't fly out to Doncaster to take the ride, and ended up missing out on what would have been the biggest payday of his career, and probably would have shot his name into lights. And Tom Marquand took over. Funnily enough, Tom Marquand, who was jocked off English King in the Epsom Derby, so that Frankie Dettori could ride that horse. It's funny how these things work back out. But just Tom Marquand was just talking about Shane Cross here, and he said, I can't stress enough how bad I feel for Shane. This is in the Racing Post, because we've all been in a situation where things haven't gone our way, and we're both relatively young, so I can relate. He'll be sat at home in pieces, no doubt. And I guess the one thing in racing is that it always comes back around. So no doubt he'll have his day. I look forward to seeing him do it. And like Tom Marquand is probably the best man that could say something like that to Shane Cross, because he's had his bad days and got back on top. But an interesting one, Tom Marquand is going out with Holly Doyle, who's absolutely blazing the trail for not just female jockeys, but just jockeys in general. She had a 4-timer there a couple of weeks ago and a 5-timer. She's had a couple of big kind of stakes successes as well. And they're kind of, it's under the radar maybe at the moment, but they could easily be like English sports or British sports power couple over the next couple of years if they both keep going as they are. But massive days racing at the Curragh today as well. Yeah. 4 Group 1s and 3 Group 1s at Longchamp today as well, with loads of Irish interest as well.
It was something that I brought up when we were doing during the whole lockdown thing, and we were doing the Mount Rushmores here, and Wexford came around, and I mentioned Aidan O'Brien had to be in contention for it, and the lads almost shot me down, just almost for siring the 2 lads as well, between Joseph and Dunica, because they're going to go on and be top trainers as well. Like, that family is absolutely incredible, and I don't think gets the, outside of racing circles, doesn't get the due here, and I guess that they're probably owed.
Yeah, well, I think non-racing fans don't give racing enough credit, and maybe racing fans give it too much credit. Somebody might make that counterpoint, but I think with the O'Briens, there are people that will say, "I should look at the money that behind them and the horses are given." You still, you can say that with another sports, managers, coaches, trainers had a lot of money behind it. You still have to do it. You still have to perform. You have to do it consistently. So they do deserve enormous credit. All of the O'Briens. One piece, just in case we don't mention it, I think is easy. The best pieces today is Brendan Fanning's piece on Leo Cullen, which is probably the longest piece in any paper today in the Sunday Independent. I've just gone into what Leinster have done. Like Leinster, they're just a powerhouse now in world rugby, and so important in Irish rugby. That players from Leinster are now going to the other 3 provinces. Like
41% of players are now other provinces have emanated from Leinster. And the scary thing about Fanning's piece for me was that
rugby nicknames are usually off. But Geordie Murphy's gone to Ulster. Now he's known as Nordy Murphy, which I think is one of the better rugby nicknames.
Listen, it makes a break from 40% than being called Hugo.
But Aidan O'Brien not getting enough credit, but Stuart Lancaster rightly is getting a lot of credit what's happened with Leinster. But Leo Cullen has been massive, and he's the guy who brings Lancaster in. He has the humility not to want to be taken, to allow a guy who was a proven head coach at international level. Some people would just be thinking, no, this guy will steal my thunder. But he was just his eye in the big picture. And if you look at Leo Cullen's record, both as a player and as a coach, he's just outstandingly successul. And the moves he's made, like I kind of forgot about it when Graham Henry came in for a brief period for 5-figure sum. They said, but he Brendan mentions in the piece the impact that had in Johnny Sexton. It was done in a very subtle way. They got him to give him a lift for 40 minutes one day and just chat to him, and apparently it had a big impact on Sexton. Like, there were little markers that were hit all the time, and even the way they've used the school system, which is often an abused one, but they've broadened it out beyond the top six schools. But the schools now are very, they're really very much, so many schools now are conveyor belts into the Leinster academies and into the Leinster system. And Leinster consistently producing top-class players who'll end up having careers, maybe not with Leinster, but with the other three provinces or abroad.
Yeah, it's a brilliant piece. There's so much in it. The scary thing for me about in that piece was the amount of pushy parents that seem to be pushing their kids in schools towards the good programmes. And essentially that's what Leinster is being fueled by now, is by a lot of parents who want to see their kids do better.
There's a little sidebar with the training programme of Newbridge College for a week. I know, and they would, a lot of those would be leaving cert students. And you know, people talk about, GA players intercounty level too much on their plate. When you're looking at that 17, 18-year-olds, what they do in terms of field sessions, gym sessions, recovery, etc., plus studying for their leaving, it's amazing.
Yeah, incredible stuff. Lads, thanks so much for taking time out today for the pay-per-view. Nick Fernie from the Irish Independent, Kieran Cunningham, Chief Sports Writer with the Irish Daily Star. Thank you.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB Sports, in partnership with Cadbury FC, have kicked off a brand new series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in football. The second of these sees Ian Rice.
I love watching great players play. I love watching great games.
And Sol Campbell sit down for an in-depth chat, which will be brought to you on OTB social channels and OTB Sports Radio on Thursday, 17th of September. Check out CadburyFC.com for updates on promotions and giveaways.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
3 minutes past 8 here this morning. You're very welcome on to OTB AM. If you're a podcast listener, then you're only tuning in right now. We've got great stuff coming for you over the next 2 hours. Nathan is here with us this morning. Nathan, the hardest working man in showbiz. You were over at the game yesterday, right?
Right, Ger, yes. And now I'm self-isolating for 2 weeks.
The NFL coverage last night, they kept taking the piss out of the crowd noise. This was interesting. It was Jim Nantz and Tony Romo, and they were like, "Oh, the home crowd don't like that, do they?" It's like, all right, okay. You've just decided. Okay, fine, fair enough. So that was interesting.
It was like Martin Tyler and Jamie Carragher during the commentary of the Liverpool Leeds match whenever Koch got the ball and there was a little snigger in the background.
Was there a line?
Martin Tyler, as the game went on, it became more and more Koch, so he didn't have to call him Koch.
And was there a line at one point where Tyler said to Jamie Carragher, "It's more of a guttural sound at the back of your throat"? Should come naturally to you?
I didn't hear that bit.
Was there?
No. Did he?
I don't know.
Oh, brilliant.
So somebody said it on Twitter. Maybe it was apocryphal. And like a lot of the stuff that you read on Twitter, it's not real. But it's certainly, I was like, if Martin Tyler said that, I'm like, all right.
Yeah, it's bringing it to another level.
It is.
So Jim Nantz was obviously listening to the fake crowd noise and not impressed.
It's getting piped into their ears. I think that they've decided that there's going to be like a tape and it never gets above a certain level if there's fake crowd noise. Because some of the stadiums have crowds, quite a lot of crowds, and it'd be crazy to go to a sports event now and be in a big crowd, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be really crazy to go to a sports event?
It's the type of thing that would only happen in America, Jared.
Only in they had some in Kansas, they had some in Dallas, they had some in Florida. Places of mayhem. Not like Armagh, where they're all sitting side by side. In the picture at the back of... This is a picture from the weekend, it says, in the back of the Irish Independent. Should I walk the whole way over to the TV so you can actually... to the screen so you can see that? I'm going to do that. This is never good.
This is new.
Yeah, so
this is the Armagh Senior Football Final. Is it Mallory and Crossmaglen?
The lighting's not great. There, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Those people are all a little bit close to each other, aren't they?
Well, maybe it's just the depth of the shot doesn't come through completely
within that.
But this is the problem. This was pointed out previously. There was a game, was it in the Tyrone Football Championship, where everybody was, were they better spread out in Tyrone, but then in some of the ones in the Republic, they were all in on top of each other. And that's going to be the issue. If the next step, the three main governing bodies met the government on Friday about getting crowds back in and made it clear just how desperate they were to get crowds back in, and not just 100-200, that they need pretty much as close as they can get to full stadiums to be able to start making some money. That you could go with a
all right, let's have 20% of a stadium, which would make sense. So instead of only 200 people being allowed in Croke Park and 200 people being allowed in the back pitch in Ballyhonus, actually 20% means you come up with a number. But if the 20% then all decide, hey, you know what, we're all going to sit in together, it don't make much sense.
No, the numbers over the weekend, numbers yesterday, not great. And like, I'm all for experimenting to see how safe we can do this, but you know, everybody's sitting cheek by jowl in the same part of the stadium. Doesn't seem like the wisest thing to do. Obviously, very reluctant to criticise anybody who might have been involved in the organising and the seating plans, because like everybody's definitely trying their best, and nobody's certainly, apart from those goons marching at the weekend, nobody's actually actively trying to spread misinformation or that. But so I don't know, it's just like you're looking at the American stuff going, oh, those crazy loons, what are they doing? What are they doing? And it's like back page of the Indo today going, oh.
And generally in America, from what I've seen, they are spread out.
Yeah. Now, not a lot of masks being worn by the Jacksonville crowd that I was seeing yesterday, but right. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. If you don't have the OTB Sports app, then search OTB Sport in your app store and download it now. We need to talk about the right-back dilemma, which is no longer a dilemma, surely. I mean, there was... Sport very rarely gives you the perfect fixture list for drama, the way we have now got the perfect fixture list for drama. All off-season, Matt Doherty, he was the shiny new thing, going to Spurs. He was like, they're a better team than Everton. They're higher up. They're more likely to be playing Champions League football at some point during his next this contract that he's in at the moment. Is Seamus Coleman, I mean, okay, so they've got rid of his competition for a right back, but is he going to play that much? Oh, look, lo and behold, the Ireland captain, still the Ireland captain, gets dropped for 2 games, not 1. We thought maybe, you know, it'd be half and half, but no, it's 2 games. Matt Doherty is the man. It's his jersey. And then the Premier League fixture list pits them against each other on the opening day of the season. Surely this is the bit where Matt Doherty rips the bloody corpse of Seamus Coleman and goes, this is my job now, right? Isn't that what happened yesterday?
Seamus Coleman is back, baby. He is back. Yeah, and he was bloody good yesterday as part of a bloody good Everton team. And Matt Doherty, some questions were asked, most notably by his manager, about his fitness. And yeah, it was perfectly set up, particularly because they were both playing as a right back in a back four, which is what Stephen Kenny wants to do. I think some of the reaction has been over the top. Coleman was brilliant, but Coleman was never as bad as people said over the last few years. He was struggling in an Everton team that were massively struggling. And you watch him yesterday, and it was the Seamus Coleman of old. It was probably the best performance Seamus Coleman has put in years. But again, because it was the best performance Everton have probably put in years. They absolutely controlled the game. The 3 new midfielders they brought in bossed it. And you could see Coleman, the confidence he had when he gave the ball to Alan in the middle or to James Rodriguez. You know what? I can bomb forward. I can get into the opposition area because they're not going to lose it.
Yeah.
And then plenty of time to get back when he needed to. Whereas Matt Doherty, actually, when he was in possession of the ball, did everything you would expect. Like these charging runs into the area. He nearly scored a stunner. It would have been a totally different conversation if Jordan Pickford hadn't made that save just before half-time. Like the link-up play with Harry Kane was top class. The issue for Doherty is going to continue to be defensively in a back four. His manager said he wasn't fit. I'm assuming he meant that, and it's Jose, so maybe I shouldn't assume anything. I'm assuming he meant that in the way of, well, it's the first day of the season. He's just not fit enough yet, in that he was on holidays for 3 weeks after Wolves' Europa League campaign, came straight into Ireland camp, played 2 matches, I presume couldn't train last Monday, maybe even not last Tuesday at Tottenham. Has only had a couple of sessions and has to start a game in what they expect to be a high-intensity position. And that Mourinho isn't saying, well, actually, there's a question over professionalism here and he's just not where he should be for a professional footballer. So give Matt Doherty time on that. But he does have, and I noticed this at Wolves as well, he has a strange running style in that he never looks like he's sprinting. So Seamus Coleman looks like a Donegal footballer, tearing back, putting his heart and soul, doing whatever it takes to get back in cover. And Matt Doherty seems to have this nice little jog. Yeah, what's going on here? I'll get back now sometime soon.
It's middle distance. He's a middle distance runner who's going to run 25k and be at the same pace at the start of that 25k.
But he's not because Matt Doherty was on the show with us about 2-3 months ago, and I was asking him about Wolves training, and he said he was saying he was out doing a lot of running at the time during lockdown and just clocking up the miles. I was saying, is that what you need for playing at Wolves? Just a lot of energy so you can keep going? He said, no, actually more intense sprints.
Right.
And that's where I am. One of the top, if not the top in the Premier League, is these short, intense sprints. So maybe it is just that he's at 90%, and we know that these guys need to be at 100%. But I think, yes, if you're looking at yesterday in a pure back four, you're thinking Seamus Coleman. But I still think you can play both of them. I would find some way of playing Matt Doherty. He has the skill set that he can deliver in attacking positions.
We've got Kenny Cunningham joining us after 9 o'clock, and Kenny in a throwaway last week was like, oh, we saw in Gibraltar they couldn't play together. I just want to, we can revisit that, because 45 minutes in a gale force wind in a fixture where nobody played well, literally nobody played well, except maybe Darren Randolph, who kept us in the game against Gibraltar. I'm not willing to throw out the entire possibility that Matt Doherty can't play there on the right side of midfield. Having said that, Jeff Hendrick was pretty good at the weekend.
He was. They were all good. But Doherty may face the same issue that Seamus Coleman faced for the last few weeks, that his performance is going to be reflective of his team's performance. They are right backs. They're not central midfielders. They cannot control a game from that position. Everton haven't had a midfield that they could trust for 3 or 4 years, despite all the money of this spent. And Seamus Coleman was one of those who paid the price. Okay, like, he may have lost half a yard of pace. He may not be what he was when he was 24. But the experience he's gained, he showed yesterday he can still get to it. Like, Matt Doherty now is playing in a team that have no midfield. Like Pierre-Emile Højbjerg and Harry Winks. Like, that is a massive step down for Matt Doherty from playing with Ruben Neves and João Moutinho in the middle of midfield. And he's going to have to figure that out. So, and I'm with you. I was in Gibraltar that night. Not that anyone was watching the game, because there was other things going on in the stand. It turned out that would have long-lasting effects for Irish football. But to write off, like, there's an EasyJet plane struggling to land in the wind behind Darren Randolph's goal. To write off Matt Doherty and Seamus Coleman on the basis of that, no.
Too early. 0879 180 180 if anybody wants to get involved in the conversation this morning. We'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment on any of the different streams that you're watching this. So we stream this on YouTube. We also are on Periscope and Facebook as well. And of course, the best place to listen to us these days is as a radio station on OTB Sports Radio, which you can get on the OTB Sports app. Coming up, Alan Quinlan is going to join us at 8:35 to talk about the unstoppable juggernaut that is Leinster. Obviously, they've got Saracens next weekend. Then Kenny Cunningham is going to join us after 9 o'clock. We'll do our Gillette Pressure Rankings around about 9:30. And a very special Deal or No Deal that is linking Kylian Mbappe with a move away from Paris Saint-Germain. Not the best time for him to be moving when almost nobody has any money. But, you know, at the same time, if he wants to get out, why should he waste another season in Paris? There is a big story coming out of Paris that we need to talk about. There were 5 sendings off at the end of the Marseille Paris Saint-Germain game last night. Marseille 1-0 up, won the game. Afterwards, though, it's not quite a mass brawl. There's a bit of kicking. It's not quite that footage that you've seen from is it Seville versus Barcelona, when there are flying kicks going on and Maradona's involved. But it's the modern day equivalent of that. So there's some nasty little kicking happening. Neymar gets sent off for slapping one of the Marseille players. Is it Alvaro on the back of the head?
Yeah, Alvaro Gonzalez. So first he sort of pats him on the back of the head. It starts, so Paris Saint-Germain are 1-0 down. We're 96 minutes in. They're about to lose their second game of the season. There's a lot of back and forth going on between Alvaro Gonzalez and Neymar. Then there's a late challenge in the middle of the pitch, and it all just kicks off. There's 4 players sent off, rightly. There's all sorts of pushing and shoving. And then Alvaro Gonzalez and Neymar keep at it. Neymar is sort of patting him on the back of the head, and then eventually gives him a real cheap shot, you'd have to say. It's Alvaro Gonzalez, he's right behind him, and he's sort of a little soft punch, wasn't a proper thump. The referee goes, looks at VAR, and sends Neymar off. And then as Neymar is walking off the pitch, he goes up to the 4th official and explains, and you probably have the quotes there, as to what he feels was said.
He said he was called a monkey hijo de puta, which is son of a whore, and he was racially abused, essentially. And he has repeated that claim on Twitter and on Instagram since. So he feels very strongly about it, and he is continuing to make those claims. It wasn't a heat of the moment, I'm just responding to this thing. Alvaro put a picture of him and his teammates on and said there's no racism here, denying it. But Thomas Tuchel says he didn't hear it and the referee hasn't heard it, but that they know that there's no room for any racism in football. So Tuchel seemed to be a little bit on the fence, as opposed to go and look, we're backing him fully just here. So when Neymar is accusing a rival of racially abusing him on the field of play, they need to investigate that to the very ends of the earth, and there are enough cameras there, and the mics are there, and there's no crowd noise. So somewhere, somebody's going to have access to something here that is going to prove this, hopefully, one way or another.
Yeah, that's a good point. That the lack of crowds means you should be able to hear quite a bit. And there was a lot of back and forth going on between Neymar and Alvaro Gonzalez. So you'd have to assume they're going to investigate this. Alvaro Gonzalez has gone, as you say, with the some of my best friends are black defence here, and putting up a picture with 7 or 8 black teammates. It's Neymar. He's one of the most famous footballers in the world. If this is happening to him, they need to investigate it. They need to get to the bottom of it, and they need to take some sort of action. But yeah, it wasn't. She said it's not a 1980 scrap, but it's probably as heated a scrap as you're going to see in modern day football. And Neymar was straight over, and as you say, you could hear what he was saying to the fourth official, race east, and he's telling the referee exactly what was said. So you would expect his club would back him.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know when that interview with Thomas Tuchel took place, whether it was instantly after the
probably
game
was,
and hadn't spoken to the player yet.
They were post-match quotes, all right. So, look, that's going to be a big story. It's going to roll for the next couple of days, you would expect, particularly in light of the fact that Black Lives Matters is basically what has become one of the other brands associated with all of the leagues around the world. And so either French football cares about this or it doesn't. Big challenge for French football to deal with it properly. Right, let's move on, because we want to talk about the tennis. A bleary-eyed Colm Boohig joins us now. Colm, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Jar Nathan.
You were up till 1:30 last night?
Oh, at least, yeah. I texted Shane Hannon saying I stayed up for it, this being the men's final between Dominic Thiem and Alexander Zverev. And in terms of just sheer excitement, not necessarily the absolute pinnacle of quality tennis, but sheer intrigue and excitement, even for the casual tennis fan. It was one of the best finals I've ever seen. It went into the wee hours. And Alexander Zverev, he'll never forget it. He'll never forget how he lost this final.
Why? What happened?
Well, he was 2 sets up, Zverev. So going into this final, everybody thought Dominic Thiem was going to walk this, maybe 4 sets. Maybe Zverev would get a set. But so since I was on OTB AM last on Friday morning, the men's semi-finals occurred. And on Friday night, Zverev played Pablo Carreño Busta, who was the guy who played Novak Djokovic when Djokovic got disqualified. And it is honestly already gone down as one of the worst Grand Slam semi-finals ever in terms of quality. It was riddled with unforced errors. I think there were 23 breaks of serve. Zverev was 2 sets to love down. He's never come back from 2 sets to love down in a best of 5. But he did, because Carreño Busta completely faded away. So going into this match last night, everybody thought Zverev isn't even good enough or doesn't really deserve to be in this final because of his route to the final, whereas Thiem had swept everybody aside in straight sets, with the exception of the 2014 US Open winner Marin Cilic, who took 1 set off him in the previous rounds. But then it came to the match, and Zverev, especially for the first set and a half, blew Thiem out of the water. He was hitting ridiculously fast serves, 140 miles per hour. He was hitting winner after winner. The type of shots that he was missing on Friday night in the semi-final, he was getting down the line. Thiem, who was already been to 3 Grand Slam finals and lost them all, was visibly nervous. His footwork was nowhere near what it usually is. His technique was off, and Zverev was taking full advantage. And then suddenly, third set, even though Zverev got an early break in the third set, Thiem woke up. And what happened was one of the great modern finals.
And what happened?
So if Zverev was 2-1 up in the third set, and then Thiem immediately broke back to get to 2-all. And what was happening the first 2 sets was Thiem was standing so far back beyond the baseline for Zverev's serve that he was sometimes out of shot. So he simply just moved up a bit and took Zverev's serve on. And the thing with Zverev is he's incredibly talented. His ground strokes are amazing. He has this unbelievable inside-in forehand, they call it, where he shapes the hit of the cross court and he goes in the ear court and nobody can get to it. And he has an incredible backhand. It's very steady. But the problem with Zverev's serve is that it's either incredible or it's terrible. There's nothing in between. He started hitting double faults. He hit 15 in the end. And Thiem, when he was missing, stopped missing. So he took the third set. He took the fourth set. It looked like Thiem's going to walk this in the 5th set. But then Thiem cramped up in the 5th set. Zverev broke him. and then served for the championship at 5-3, Zverev, and immediately went love 40 down because he completely battled it. Completely battled it, Zverev. So team broke back. Then team broke himself to go 6-5 ahead and serve for the championship, and battled it just like Zverev did. So went into a final set tiebreak. I could stop there because there's so much.
Before we get to the tiebreak, on a point of order though, you said it's one of the best finals you've ever seen. Is that how did you characterise it?
Best in terms of sheer intrigue and interest.
Quality level seems to be low, given. What I'm saying here is this can't rank alongside Nadal versus Federer because these two aren't as good as Nadal and Federer.
Oh yeah, but I mean that was Nadal Federer. If you're talking about the 2008 Wimbledon final, there's not going to be a better match than that. But it doesn't have the quality of even say last year's Wimbledon final between Djokovic and Roger Federer, which Federer had 2 championship points in and lost. But what you had here was the reason why this is so good. Okay, is because it was flawed. There was a lot of unforced errors. There were a lot of double faults. But the quality of tennis was very good at times. Right. So for the first 2 sets, Zverev was just incredible. And as I say, if you were a casual tennis fan, and Owen was asking me this on Friday morning, why would a casual tennis fan be interested in this? Well, last night was your answer, because you were watching 2 people be extremely good at what they do. And Zverev demonstrated that in the first 2 sets. And in the next 2 sets, Thiem showed why he is clearly the best of the rest outside the big 3. Because Thiem is a better player than Zverev. He has a 7-2 head-to-head record, including beating him at this year's Australian Open semi-final and a 2018 French Open quarter-final. So Thiem knew he could beat him. But the fascination occurred in that Thiem did not show up, having obliterated all competition en route to the final. A bit like Serena Williams has done in the last 4 finals that she's been in. And Zverev, you could see in his mind, he was thinking, this is really easy. This is too easy. He was 6-2, 5-1 up inside an hour. 1 hour. And he had a set point to win it 6-1. He won the second set 6-4, but he had a set point to win it 6-1. And he was serving and volleying Zverev, which he wouldn't do normally. But he was putting Thiem under pressure because he could see Thiem was nervous. So he had an easy volley to win the set 6-1, and he put it wide. And I texted a friend of mine who was up watching it too, and I said, I have a funny feeling this is going to go the distance, because Zverev, you can see, is thinking, why is this so easy? What's wrong with Thiem? And then Thiem woke up at the start of the 3rd set. And I was willing the match to end so I could go to bed, but it just kept going and going and going.
And so ultimately, what happens in the 5th set tiebreak?
I still have to try and process this. So Zverev went 2-love up at the start of the 5th. And I never really believed Zverev was going to win it, even though, as I say, he served for a 5-3, and then he went 2-love up in the tiebreak. But I just didn't believe he believed that he could win it. So Thiem immediately broke back. Then Thiem had 2 championship points. And he lost the first one on his own serve because Zverev went for this outrageous forehand, which 9 times out of 10 would hit the net, and it went in. And then the second championship point was on Zverev's serve. So as I said to you, Zverev hit 15 double faults. So he missed his first serve. And I was watching it thinking, oh, he's going to double fault. He's going to double fault to give Thiem the championship. This is going to be embarrassing. He hit his second serve, clocked in at 68 miles per hour. So to put that into context, that's the speed of your local tennis club. It was embarrassing. It just went over the net. So much so that Thiem was caught off guard by how terrible the shot was. So he was so far back in the court that he couldn't get to the ball in time and hit the net. So the play continued. It was 6-all in the tiebreak, which meant next point had championship point. And what transpired was this incredible rally, which was almost like a table tennis rally because they were so close together. They both went up to the net and they started smacking it back and forth, trying to get that opening to hit at either side of their opponent. And I think it was the 5th attempt at that Thiem, basically like a penalty in football, wrong-footed Zverev, i.e. the goalkeeper, and put it into the far corner. And that set up 3rd championship point for Thiem at 7-6. And Zverev hit it wide. And Thiem won it at 8-6 in the tiebreak. But I think the best decision that the Grand Slams have made is that they've turned the final set into tiebreaks now instead of going to you have to win by 2 clear games. So we had a tiebreak at last year's Wimbledon between Djokovic and Federer. the match that I've mentioned already. And this is the first ever final set tie break in the US Open for the men's side. And it was brilliant because at 6-all in the tie break, as I was saying, it was whoever wins this point is going to have championship point. So Zverev never had championship point. He got to 2 points within winning the title, and Zverev won it on his 3rd championship point in his 4th Grand Slam final. This was Zverev's 1st Grand Slam final.
Yeah.
So Thiem is probably the deserved winner, but I feel so sorry for Zverev, who was welling up afterwards because his parents couldn't make it.
Well, let's play the clip. Here he is talking about his parents to close out his runner-up speech. Have a look.
There's some special people missing in the crowd today.
Personnes importantes qui manquent aujourd'hui.
I mean, I want to thank my parents.
Mes parents.
Sorry.
Ouais, c'est dur. Hein. C'est très très dur pour Zverev. C'est évident qu'il allait craquer après un moment aussi difficile. Monstrueux, hein, ce qui est en train de se passer, ce qui s'est passé pour lui sur ce match, la déception, les occasions qu'il a eues.
They're always with me in every single tournament.
Toujours avec moi.
Unfortunately, you know, my dad and my mother got tested positive before the tournament, and they couldn't have
Malheureusement,
gone with me.
mes parents n'ont pas pu être avec moi sur ce tournoi.
I mean, I miss him, but
Il me manque.
and this is tough.
C'est dur.
Sasha.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're sitting at home, even though I lost. They're pretty proud, and
yeah, I love the little French translation where nothing's being said, and he's chatting away about this guy cracked today, and he's cracking again now. Not a lot of sympathy. Oh, it's difficult. Zverev is go on.
So Dominic Thiem is best of the rest, you say, Colm. Like, I'm not sure what size font they allow on Wikipedia, but just how big is the asterisk going to be alongside Dominic Thiem for winning this Grand Slam? Like, you're best of the rest. When nobody else bothers to show up, you can win one.
Novak shut up. Just couldn't keep his temper.
Didn't have to beat anybody of note at any stage.
No, that's not true. So Dominic Thiem, he beat Felix Auger-Aliassime, who's probably the best young player that tennis has seen in 20 years. He hammered Andy Murray, so he beat him very comfortably, which shows how good Thiem is. And the other thing
you were saying last week that Andy Murray couldn't even walk. He was on one leg. It's hardly an achievement to beat Andy Murray these days.
No, but beating the player of the esteem of Andy Murray, considering Auger-Aliassime's age, was very, very impressive. And then Thiem showed just how far he is ahead of anybody else. And I have to say for Thiem, it's not really Thiem's fault that he is playing in the era of the 3 greatest players that ever played tennis. They happen to all be playing at the same time. So, you know, Djokovic, Nadal and Federer in tennis terms are superhuman. And like Thiem is the best human tennis player on earth, put it that way. He is slightly flawed, but incredibly talented. So there's absolutely no asterisks against Thiem, because Federer, I don't think Federer will win another Grand Slam, even if he was playing at this. He's 39. He's racked with injuries. Rafa Nadal, Nadal is the only asterisk really that he wasn't there because he's the defending champion. But other than that, I mean, Thiem beat last year's finalist, Daniel Medvedev, in straight sets in Friday's semi-final. So to say he didn't beat anybody is incredibly harsh and untrue, Nathan. He beat a lot of talented players. I think Zverev had actually quite a straightforward route to the final. Zverev, the highest seeded player he beat was Carina Busta in the semi-final, who's ranked 27th. He beat Kevin Anderson in the first round as a former finalist at the US Open, but Anderson's in his mid-30s. So if anyone, Zverev had the easy route through to the final. Thiem did it the hard way in terms of on paper, but he demolished everybody.
And we're going to see a lot more of these two over the next while because they're both young enough that we will be watching them. So we better get used to it's Swiss and a German, was it? It's Thiem Swiss?
Zverev's German and Thiem's Austrian, and they're best friends.
Sorry.
They're best friends. So after the match, they did their secret handshake, even though Zverev was on the verge of tears. So it's lovely to see. I don't know how that will.
These are grown men, and they have a secret handshake.
I don't know how that will affect their long-term relationship, but they are best friends currently.
Maybe. Let's never mention the secret handshake again. 8:30 this morning. I want to play you this though. Naomi Osaka addressed her decision to highlight the Black Lives Matter movement throughout the tournament after her win. Have a look at this.
You said from the beginning you had 7 matches, 7 masks, 7 names. What was the message you wanted to send, Naomi?
Well, what was the message that you got was more the question. I feel like the point is to make people start talking.
What were you most gratified about the awareness that you raised?
I mean, for me, I've been inside of the bubble, so I'm not really sure what's really going on in the outside world. All I can tell is what's going on social media, and for me, I feel like, you know, the more retweets it gets, or that's so lame, but, you know, the more people talk about it.
So that's Naomi Osaka using her platform. Did she win handy enough? Is she...
No.
No?
No, exactly. It was the same team as team. She was 6-1 down and 2-love down inside 40 minutes against Victoria Azarenka on Saturday night. Azarenka continued her blistering form really from the semi-final against Serena Williams, where after Williams took the first set, also 6-1, she obliterated Williams. And in the quarterfinal, Azarenka won 6-1, 6-love. So it looked like she was going to destroy Osaka. And Osaka said in the same post-match interview there that she was asked, well, you know, what were you thinking when you were 6-1, 2-love down? And she said, I don't want this to be an embarrassment. I don't want to lose the second set 6-love and be out of here within an hour. So she said she stopped thinking about winning her second US Open and third Grand Slam and just started thinking about winning game by game. So it was the old cliche of one day at a time. And that worked for her because she came back and won, as I say, her third Grand Slam championship. And it means that she has won the most Grand Slams out of any Asian player ever on men's and women's side. She's beaten Li Na from China in that record, and she's the first player on the women's side since 1994 to lose the first set of a US Open final and come back and win when Arantxa Sanchez Vicario beat Steffi Graf. So it's more accolades to add to Osaka's already very impressive career. She's only 22 years of age, and as I say, 3 titles. She's the highest paid female athlete in the world, and that was before the US Open. And as I said on Friday, she stands for so much more than just tennis. So she's had an incredible 3 weeks, including the warm-up tournament before the US Open, where I'm sure you've heard that she refused to play her semi-final in line with the NBA players' protests in the Black Lives Matter movement. And the tournament responded by postponing play for 24 hours in solidarity with Osaka's protest. And then Osaka ended up playing the final, but actually withdrew with a hamstring injury against Azarenka. This time she beat Azarenka in the final.
Okay. The French Open is there a week and then it's French Open? Is there 2 weeks? How long before?
So it's 13 days time. It starts on a Sunday traditionally. So it's the 27th of September. And in the meantime, you have the Italian Open in Rome, which is the warm-up tournament, the traditional warm-up tournament before the French Open. So Novak Djokovic is already over there. Rafa Nadal is there. So the big hitters, 2 of the 3 big players will definitely be playing the French Open. Unlike the WTA side, where the defending champion and world number 1, Ash Barty, isn't playing at the French Open. She's not travelling from Australia because of COVID fears. So it won't be the same on the women's side, but it will be slightly stronger on the men's side from the lineup of the US Open. But yeah, it's such a quick turnaround for these players. And I'd be interested to see actually if Osaka plays at the French Open. I'm sure she will, but so she's the 3 Grand Slams she's won has both been, or all 3 have been on hard courts at the US Open and the Australian Open. But she's not gone beyond, I think, the 3rd round of either Wimbledon or the French Open. So grass and clay is proving problematic for her. So if she wants to become, you know, a true great living legend of the sport, just tennis itself, she's already a legend in terms of what she's doing off the court. But if she wants to become an absolute true great up there with Serena and the rest, she'll probably have to adapt to grass and clay. So I'll be interested to see if she plays. But as I say, I'm sure she will, but I wouldn't be absolutely shocked if she left it off.
All right, Colm, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning and for staying up late last night.
Don't ignore the elephant in the room, Jared. Don't ignore the elephant in the room here. Colm this morning, it'll be the equivalent of me next week after the US Open turning up in a Nike hat and a red Nike t-shirt. He's basically turned into Roger Federer. Duck down a bit there, Colm, when we see the hair. He is essentially Roger Federer.
All I've done is not cut my hair since January.
That is a compliment.
Oh, thanks for that. Thanks. An on-air compliment. Thank you.
You not seen it, Jer?
I'm just letting that moment of awkwardness linger in the air a little bit so everybody can feel uncomfortable.
I'm fine. I'm giving the floor to you if you want to add.
0879 180 180 if you want to give us your opinions on Roger Federer being our guest this morning. Thanks very much, Roger. Good to have you with us. I hope your backhand is just as delicate and beautiful as Roger Federer's is too. Right. We're excited to tell you that Just Eat have launched the Euro Food Ball quiz. which will test Irish football fans' knowledge of the European Championships, giving you the chance to win cool prizes or bragging rights over your friends. You can compete nationally to win the grand prize of 4 tickets to the Euros next year in Dublin, and you can also take part in a specially created OTB Sports Mini League, for which you can win 2 tickets to the Euros in Dublin alongside Just Eat vouchers and an official Euro 2020 football. Go to justeat.ie/campaign/Euro Football Quiz to sign up and test your Euros football knowledge, and keep an eye on otbsports.com today and all this week to find out how to enter our league. We'll be tweeting out details of that as well. If you'd missed the link, it's just-eat.ie/campaign/Euro Football Quiz. See, it was food. There you go. And it looks cool. It looks, the first question that I was on was Dennis Bergkamp video, reminding me of the 1992 Euros, which is, it turns out, my favourite football tournament because, I don't know why, but just the goals and the quality of the football was better than anything I'd ever seen up to that point anyway. Right, interesting story here, which you may have seen on our social channels over the weekend from the Saturday panel from Mike McCarthy. He spoke about the standards Stuart Lancaster set from the get-go at Leinster.
Yeah, one that happened with me actually towards the end of my career was when Stuart Lancaster just come in. It was his first kind of, he came halfway through the season. So I've been out for 9 months with a few bad concussions. I had a really bad one against France in the Six Nations, and I just kind of got my starting place in the Irish team then, and got stood down for 9 months. And I came back. I played, I think, a pre-season game against Bath, and then we played Glasgow away. Glasgow made a line break on about the halfway, and I just wasn't match fit. So 6 months out, and I didn't even realise, but I was jogging, even walking a bit, but getting back into the defensive line in our own 22, and didn't really think too much about it. And then went into the club on the Monday to Leinster, and was just waiting for our team review. We lost that game against Glasgow away, and Stuart just called me into the office. So I went into the office. He said, "Macca, have you seen this clip?" He showed me it, and it was me walking back into the defensive line. And he said, "Macca, I'm going to give it to you in this video session." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, Stu, no worries, fair play." And went into the video session, and he called me out on it. And I stuck my hands up, said, "Yeah, that's fair enough. That's unacceptable. Shouldn't be walking back into the defensive line. That's a really poor picture." And just totally changed my mindset, and just really showed him setting the tone early on in his life and at Leinster. And he called me out, and it was a great example to the younger players, a more senior player. And I don't think I ever walked into a defensive line after that. So that was a good example maybe of how Stu perhaps works.
180 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number here if you want to get in touch with us. We are turning our attention to rugby. We'll get to Alan Quinlan in just a moment, but are Leinster the greatest Irish club side in any sport ever, Nathan?
They've got to be right up there. Kilkenny hurlers, Dublin footballers, that's sort of the shortlist at this stage, I guess. But they're on the cusp of achieving absolute greatness. They just got to finish the job.
Yeah.
And that's where the pressure is going to be racked up now. Like from here to not go and finish the season and win the European Champions Cup would sort of be seen as a failure.
Well,
they are that good.
It'll definitely be a disappointment, and I think that features on your pressure rankings a little bit later on. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, Jaron. Yourself?
I think Ulster actually played about as well as they could do for the first 25, 35 minutes of the game, and even then, I don't know, was it ever in doubt?
Yeah, I think the game probably finished when Robbie Henshaw gets the intercept. I think that just deflates Ulster and takes away any little bit of belief that they have. And in fairness, they kept trying. They passed the ball more. They had more possession, more territory, Ulster. But Leinster just so good with the ball. Without the ball was probably the most impressive on Saturday. They just took away any sort of momentum Ulster had. And Ulster needed a bit of a break, a pass to stick, or a little bit of laziness, or Leinster switching off somewhere in the defensive line. And they kept knocking on the door in the first half, and that's why Leinster's so good. Their resilience, they dig deep in defence, and they're shrewd in the way they defend as well. Whether they attack the breakdown or whether they just fan out, they're good. They read that very, very well. And as I said, Ulster had a lot of possession, but just couldn't couldn't penetrate, and some of those offloads maybe that kind of stuck last week Leinster didn't allow that to happen on Saturday. So you just had the feeling at the end of the game that it was. I mean this respectfully, that it was the gulf in class was quite big, and maybe Munster aren't that bad after all, that they can run Leinster so close in the first game and in the semi-final. But Leinster are just so powerful and so resilient, and so many of their players had big performances. I thought Andrew Porter was outstanding, for a tight head prop. Caelan Doris was brilliant again. Josh van der Fleer, Ross Byrne coming in for Sexton. Gary Ringrose being the captain and showing brilliant leadership qualities in his performance as well. Probably not someone who's as vocal as maybe Sexton, but just leads from the front with the way he plays. And James Lowe, again, full of energy. And they were very, very impressive. That was the most impressive game. And they probably have to take it up another level for Saracens next Saturday.
Yeah, that was the next question was, where's the room for improvement? Because they will have to improve. Saracens are better than Ulster at the moment.
Just probably holding on to the ball a little bit more. They had a few turnovers again at the weekend, and Ulster made a fight of it. They were physical, they were aggressive, and they disrupted them. The line-out is probably a little bit of an issue as well, that there's a concern. I think Leo Cullen spoke about that. So you've got to, I think Saracens are a team that their sole focus will be on this game. From, when they got the 70-point deduction, were effectively relegated. They lost 2 pool games against Racing and Munster in the pool rounds in Europe. Leinster 6 out of 6. The other side to do that were Toulouse, and their reward is Saracens. Probably they wouldn't say this, but at the time you just think, oh God, that's the last team you want to play against in a knockout stage, particularly with all the issues they've had, all the negativity, all the criticism. That a lot of it is justified. And Mark McCall has done a great job in Saracens in the last number of years. Some would say they've outside of the rules, but they've still produced a lot of players in their academy. You look at someone like Maro Itoje. A couple of years ago, he was in their academy. 2 years later, he's a British and Irish line. So they have produced a lot of good players, and their academy has been very powerful. And some part of it is kind of a little bit like the way Leinster produced so many players through their academy as well. So themselves and Leinster are the 2 probably most powerful sides in Europe. And the Saracens will be a bit weakened, obviously, with Owen Farrell gone. They've played 7 games since they've come back in the Premiership, but they've just mixed and matched and tried to integrate, get some game time for their internationals, and they've won 4, lost 3. You couldn't read anything into that, but I think Farrell is a big loss to them. That's a massive boost for Leinster. No crowd is going to take away that probably home advantage a little bit. A lot of these Sarries players have been there with England and won in Dublin before. So Leinster need to improve, I think, and there's room for improvement there. And I think they'll take a lot of confidence out of the composure and the control of that performance on Saturday. As I said, it looked like, was it ever in doubt? I don't think so. To be fair to Ulster, They gave it everything, but they looked bruised and battered at the end, that they had no answer. I think even Ian Henderson talking afterwards said, look, the gap is massive. And even without the ball, I think one other area, Ger, is you can't let a team like Saracens have 58% possession, because they have an ability to hurt you with their relentless pressure and with the quality that they have. Someone like Brad Barrett, Maitland, Elliot Daly, these guys can hurt you in the back line. Itoje will make it really difficult. Jackson Ray, the Vunipola brothers. You can roll off a lot of very, very powerful, strong characters there who won't be daunted by the fact that they're playing Leinster. They'll understand how good Leinster can be, but they'll feel that they can physically get in amongst them and really pack more of a punch than, say, Munster have done in the last few weeks, or Ulster at the weekend. they certainly can hurt teams with their physicality. And, Billy Vunipola, Maka Vunipola, they make, if they're in the game, they can really, cause problems for any opposition at international level, at any level. So there is room for improvement and maybe holding on to possession a little bit more and fixing the line out and being a bit more accurate with their opportunities.
Do we now know the exact pecking order of who is behind Johnny Sexton after Ross Byrne's performance? Yeah,
I think so. I think he was very assured in his performance, and I think, look, it's a very good position to be in as a fly half, where you have a pack in front of you. You have a dominant back row who are making lots of carries. They're making incredible tackles, turning the ball over, putting so much pressure on the opposition, and giving, quality ball. Their accuracy to breakdown was very, very good at the weekend, Leinster. And when any fly half gets good quality possession on the front foot, it's much easier to play. So I think he was very, very good, and he is back as number 2 to Johnny Sexton for the internationals for sure.
He's only 6 months older than Joey Carbery, and we still think of Joey Carbery as this young player. Like, he's just check he's 25. So like, these are the years where he will still be maturing, still learning how to control games, still learning how to think your way through matches where you're on the back foot, which actually you don't get that much opportunity to do at Leinster.
Yeah, and I think one area where I think his presence. You'd like to see him more dominant and be more aggressive with his carries and stuff like that, and taking the ball to the game. But that comes with confidence, Jared, for any player.
And there was a bit of that on Saturday night.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, when you're on the front foot, it's much easier. I think Saturday is probably going to be a bit different if Ross Byrne is starting, because you're getting far more pressure. And I suppose the luxury for Leinster is they have an ability to control that pressure in most games they play, because they're dominant up front. But I said this before the game, he's stepped into this situation before where he's played in these big games and they put Sexton on the bench for semi-finals and a couple of finals, and he stepped up and delivered. I think international level is another step up, and it's an area that you'd like to see him kick on now and be dominant and go to Irish training and be vocal and really come out of his shell a little bit more, because you feel he has been playing within his shell a little bit, and it's very understandable when you have someone so dominant as the starting 10, such a leader and so much experience and what Johnny Sexton has achieved. But Ross Byrne has the ability to take his game up another level, and he showed some of that quality again on Saturday. But it's about confidence. Any fly half, it's about confidence, being on the front foot, and he has that luxury at the moment.
Can I ask
Alan,
you?
there was a
Go on.
Sorry, there's a good reminder there when you were going through the Saracens team of the quality that is there, even in the absence of Owen Farrell. And when you look at Leinster, you're talking about Ulster, that you never really thought they were going to win that game. Is there any worry that somehow Leinster might be a little bit undercooked for the level of attrition that might be coming in this game, that there might be, that the Saracens might bring a ferocity that just hasn't been there so far this season for Leinster?
It's a really good question, Nathan, and it's one that we would have, when I played, it was always a concern. If you have an easy win or a less attritional win, are you battle hardened and ready for the week after? And we've seen Leinster rotate their squad over the years, where they didn't play last week. A lot of players didn't play, and they can rotate and they can mix and match, and then they go out and they bring this level of intensity. Obviously, they'll know what it's like playing against Saracens. It'll be in the back of their heads what happened in the final last year over in Newcastle, where Saracens were so physically dominant and bringing that level of power and aggression to a new level. And that's something that would be a slight concern. But I think there's enough experience in the Leinster side. And a lot of time, going back to when I played myself, it's a mental thing. It's knowing it in your head. It's speaking it as a pack of forwards. And it's knowing that, you go half-hearted into Billy Vunipola, you're going to end up back in your backside. Jamie George, Vunipola, Vincent Koch, they're a very, very strong, powerful front row. Atoje is going to be a nuisance all day. And these guys have an ability to not just make a tackle, but to wrap you up, slow the ball down, frustrate you at the breakdown. And it's how Leinster deal with that, because, you know, the template will be to be unbelievably aggressive and get in Leinster's faces. And we've seen England do it with Ireland the last couple of years with an incredible amount of intensity off the gain line, you know, when they don't have the ball, and just putting massive pressure. So I think it's you know, Leinster have got to be shrewd in the way they play this game and play in the right areas. But the aggression and the power is going to go up another level. And I'm sure Leinster will talk about that and they'll understand that. But they haven't had that kind of physical test in a while. And it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. But there's enough experience there to understand that they know what's coming. Saracens are not going to be as strong as that team last year. That's the reality. There's no Owen Farrell. There's no Will Skelton. He's with La Rochelle now. Skelton was devastating in that final with the wrap tackles and the aggression he showed. And he's 20 stone, powerful, 6'5" or 6. And Farrell is a massive loss to him, because he really dictates the tempo and the aggression and the attitude that has made Saracens a success in bullying teams.
The Leinster back row obviously has seen a lot of change over the last couple of weeks in terms of who actually starts, except it seems like Jack Conan is the number 8 and Doris is the 6. We've seen the 2 7s change, and it looked like it was kind of horses for courses in one way a little bit. Will Connors came in, it seems, with the express intention of sopping CJ Stander with chop tackles, and maybe that's just because that's the overriding memory I have, but they talked about CJ Stander in the build-up to that game. Are they now in that position where they can pick the 6'5" giant whose job is to be destructive, or they can pick Josh van der Flair if that's the game that they want? And it's like almost there's no difference in terms of quality between these two players and the outcome that you get, but there's a difference in terms of the game plan that you're trying to affect.
Yeah, I think Josh van der Flair is more of an out-and-out open side, and you saw the pressure he put under Billy Burns under at the weekend. He was outstanding. A superb performance for him, and his fitness is a huge attribute for him. The ground he covers around the field. Connor's a little bit different, and as you said, the chop tackle and chop tackling ability, the tackle technique is phenomenal. He just takes away any sort of momentum, and he's very, very physical, a bit more physical than Josh van der Flair. So I suspect that with the threat of Billy Vunipola, that Will Connors may start that game. And I've always said this, and it's very evident, and you don't have to be a rocket science to understand this. Or Billy Vunipola, when he plays well, England win, and Saracens win. When he gets over the gain line, when he hurts the opposition, if you stop him, which is not easily done, you take away a huge amount of the opposition's ability to get over that gain line and generate plays off him and run off him, because sometimes he takes 2 or 3 tacklers to stop him. He's so powerful. So I suspect they'll go with Connors to try and nullify that effect and stop Billy Vunipola. But it's an embarrassment of riches. I think, we haven't seen a lot of Max Deegan in the last few weeks. He's an exceptional player. Caelan Doris he's taken his performance to a really consistent level now, that he looks really comfortable, dominant, confident, wants the ball. He's winning lineouts, he's winning turnovers. His all-round game is fantastic, and he's been brilliant the last few weeks. And I think Jack Conan just offers that. I thought he was very, very unlucky the other day with a couple of the penalties. He couldn't roll away, and they were penalties, but he made something like 20 tackles. His work rate is phenomenal as well, and I'm a fan of his. And there's just so many options with Dan Levy maybe coming back, Scott Penny as well, and Rhys Ruddock, we haven't seen him either. So so many options there, but I suspect it'll be Will Connors and Doris and Conan for Saracens on Saturday.
Because the physical challenge. Where's Caelan Doris at? Is he going to have to be a 6 because there are 2 other 8s at Leinster, and is that the place that he should establish himself now for the next 3-4 years and try and be the 6 on the Lions and try and be the best 6 in the world? Is that, like, if you're sitting down with him as an advisor, long term, medium term, what's his career prospects?
Probably, I think. Obviously, he's played most of his rugby as an 8, but he's now playing as a 6, which is not a problem. I think number 8s can play 6 easily. 6 is probably, I'm not sure they can play in that position. Of course, physically they can, and they have the physical attributes. But playing number 8 is, you have to think your way through the game a little bit more. But Doris is a very intelligent rugby player, and he's someone who could easily slip back in and be a very, very dominant number 8 and play well there. But he's a great line-out option, and his ability to break down is very, very good, and he's improving all the time. I think the try he scored the other day, he's involved in a carry before that and a clean out, and then just gets back up off the ground, and you can see him clapping the hands, and he just can see a gap and a space, and his footwork is really good. So I'm not sure he has to really say, well, I can only play number 6 now because that's where I want to play for Ireland, and that's where I'm going to excel. Because I think he has that versatility. He doesn't have to nail himself down to being just a number 6, but I think he's probably, that's a position now where he's going to probably end up playing a lot more. He's going to try and take on Peter Mahoney for the Irish jersey, and he may get picked ahead of him. He got selected last year ahead of him, and he's the form number 6 in Ireland at the moment. And if you're Andy Farrell, do you care if he's a 6 or an 8? Like, no, you don't. You don't care where he is. The one thing that I think CJ Stander and I feel sorry for him at times, because he's such an incredible work rate for a player, and he's so effective at turning the ball over as well. And he's too good to leave out of the Irish team at the moment, unless he has a run of bad games. And I think Doris is maybe possibly too good to leave out as well. So that leaves a conundrum for Andy Farrell. Does he play Peter O'Mahony or Caelan Doris? Because I think at the moment, you can't leave Stander out of the Irish team, I think. And someone like Doris is more of a footballer, and he will put that bit of deception in some of his carries as well. But it's a good position for Andy Farrell to be in as well, when you have certain players in really good form coming into what's going to be ahead in November. And what about James Lowe? How close is he to an Ireland starting berth? Very close, I think. I'd be surprised if he doesn't play some of the games in November. He's just all action, full of energy, powerful in his carries, and just wants the ball in his hands. I love to see wingers coming in off the wing, offering themselves up off phase play, or even off some of the set piece stuff where they're tracking the inside and they're used. He can be devastating. I think he sometimes, and this is probably you'll see it a little bit more. It's like you get less space the higher you go up. There was an opportunity for him to give a pass on Saturday when Leinster created a little bit of width, where he came from the wing. Could have given the pass, but decided to look for defend and tuck the ball under the left hand. Whereas they're the subtle little touches that maybe you have to be better at when you play international rugby. But he's a fantastic player, someone who you can use, and you can use him off set plays. You can use him as a strike runner, and then he's a try scorer. He knows where the try line is. He scores a lot, and he's very powerful. So he's someone I think will play for Ireland in November. All right, last question for you then. Obviously, there was a few bits in the paper at the weekend saying Leo Cullen isn't getting the credit that he deserves for his role in building the unstoppable juggernaut that is the Leinster Rugby team at the moment. That's a fair enough point, really. Like, he is the architect of so much of this and has managed to keep so many players happy despite the fact that they're not getting game time. Yeah, look, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't when it comes to Leo Cullen, because of Lancaster kind of being this shadow behind him all the time, and hearing the players in the last couple of years coming out talking about the impact Lancaster has made. But Leo's, I think, he's calm, controlled, and he's done a fantastic job in piecing it all together. He was the one who probably was open to the idea of bringing in Lancaster and went and got him. And I think, he deserves massive credit, I think, in what he's done there. It's a very difficult job in some ways. It's a great job for any coach because, you're successful, and he's been incredibly successful. But managing all the players and trying to keep them happy and keep them on board. And we've seen some of the players in the last number of years, guys moving on and making hard decisions around, even particularly around Fergus McFadden and Rob Kearney. You have to make ruthless decisions, which sometimes the sentimental side of it goes, and it looks unfair at times, and they're all the big calls you got to make, and he's the one that's kind of driving the whole thing. So he's pieced it all together, and he deserves massive credit for all that.
Alan, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. We'll talk to you again later in the week. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
Alan Quinlan giving us some thoughts on Leinster's performance against Ulster at the weekend. Now, OTB Sports, in partnership with Cadbury FC, have kicked off a brand new series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in football. The second episode sees Ian Wright and Sol Campbell sit down for an in-depth chat, which will be brought to you on OTB's social channels and OTB Sports Radio on Thursday, the 17th of September. Check out cadburyfc.com for updates on promotions and giveaways. Celtic's game could be Ireland's loss, Gary Breen told OTB Sports on Saturday. This was pretty controversial. We're going to get into this with Kenny Cunningham in just a moment. He reckons the quality in Scotland just isn't good enough. It's Gary Breen, have a look.
I think it's a bit of a lazy assumption that he won't be able to play that high line. I've never said that he won't be able to do it. I just feel that it's a different challenge to him. And if you're asking me, can he do it? I believe he can do it. Because if you talk about him going in the Premier League, he's playing against top-class centre-forwards all the time. Now, I know under Chris Hughton, they defended deeper, but under Potter, it was higher. So he can cope against these players. I've no doubt about that. But there has to be context in that. That was a pre-season game for him. He's playing for his country, which is effectively a pre-season game in terms of where they are fitness levels. Now, centre-halves, by their very nature, and I'm telling you this through experience, take longer to get that fitness in terms of your movements, having to go quickly up to press the centre-forward, then spinning behind.
He looked like that anyway, didn't he?
Yeah, look at the size of him. It's going to take him games. It would have taken the likes of Richard Dunn. They're those type of centre-halves who are tipping the scales at maybe 14, 15 stone as opposed to me at 13 stone. It's a massive difference. So he was always going to be sluggish. But I think that it's been too quick to say, he's vulnerable now. Can he make the adjustment in terms of playing the high line? Yes, of course he can. Because every challenge that he has faced, bear it in mind that horrific injury he got, he comes back stronger. He goes to the Championship with Brighton, they get promoted. Then everyone's saying, can he do it in the Premier League? Yes, he can. Because he hasn't been embarrassed by any centre-forwards in the Premier League. My big concern is that I think it's a brilliant move for Celtic. I genuinely do. I think that he'll get double figures in goals. I said that. I think he'll be a legend up there in a 10-in-a-row season. My big concern for Ireland is the quality of player that he's playing against, and that he does get into a little bit of bad habits, not because he's lazy, because I don't think that, but that he's not up against quality centre-forwards. Every centre-forward, there's no centre-forward in Scotland who would play in a Premier League team, none. So he's going to be playing against lesser quality, and that's the concern, because even the likes of Van Dijk come down to Southampton from Celtic with dreadful habits in terms of not him losing the ball, but not getting into those positions quickly enough, because he didn't have to in Celtic, because they're not good enough to punish you.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Premier League is back on Off the Ball with 2 live and exclusive commentaries every Sunday.
First time ball into the back post to Salah. Oh, what a save! And it's in! Liverpool have scored!
And the best analysis around for Brian Kerr, Kenny Cunningham, Damien Delaney and John Giles.
He's real. There's no bullshit with Johnny Giles.
We've got the football show weeknights from 9, live goals every Saturday from 1, and the biggest games every Sunday. That's the Premier League, live and exclusive on OTB Sports Radio. Football on Off the Ball with Paddy Power, fueling the mischief in the beautiful game. Always gamble responsibly. See dunlewy.net for more.
Into sports.
20 yards out, Ursa shoot, don't shoot! Oh, what a goal for Fabinho! Wow!
Then get into the all-new OTB Sports app.
I think when he apologises to me, I probably will say hello to him, yeah. No.
Videos, sports news, live scores, interviews.
If Fabregas is going to come up to me in the street and give me some of the mouth that he would have given me on a football pitch, what would he do? He'd get a slap.
Plus, exclusive content on the OTB Podcast Network. The biggest names in sports. Ready when you are. Search OTB Sports on your app store and download it now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. And a reminder, if you don't have the OTB Sports app already, then what the hell is wrong with you? Go and get it. Go download it now. It's free. Search OTB Sports in the App Store. Kenny Cunningham is with us this morning. Kenny, how are you?
Morning, Ger. All good. Good to be back in your company.
You're going to need your earphones, otherwise you won't be able to hear Nathan.
Oh, excuse me. Apologies. Is that not a bad thing, is it?
Kenny!
Nathan, how's it going?
Now,
that's magic, Kenny.
We played the clip there into the ad break of the biggest story in British football over the weekend, according to Chris Sutton. That's what the Premier League returns, and Chris Sutton chooses to pick on poor Gary Breen because of what he said there, which seemed pretty straightforward to me. I'm trying to find the exact quote here, Nathan, if you have it right in front of you. Here we go. Chris Sutton, at Chris_Sutton73 on Twitter. Idiotic attack on the Scottish game by Gary Breen, suggesting Shane Duffy's Ireland place may be under threat because he plays in Scotland. It's been good enough for the likes of Larson, Van Dijk, etc. Your thoughts on 6:06 tonight, 6:30 to 8 p.m. Call 0808 590 693. What do you think? What do you think, Kenny?
Well, I wouldn't. Obviously, knowing Chris a little bit, it wouldn't be the first time. Maybe Chris has gone a little bit exaggerated his response, somewhat, and attracted a bit of attention off the back of it. But I listened to some of Gary's interview there. I didn't hear an awful lot wrong with it. I thought it was quite a reasoned argument.
Yeah.
Which Gary had made. He was actually
praising both Celtic and Shane Duffy, but the Celtic fans and the Scottish football fans think no.
What was the big? I don't understand.
His
what
point was
the huge criticism was. What Gary said.
Gary said
there were two issues. One was that Shane Duffy will return to Ireland a worse footballer because he'll have it so easy at Celtic, and the other, which was sort of the end line, was there isn't a striker in Scottish football who could play in the Premier League.
Yeah, well, I think that's a reasonably fair comment in terms of not saying there's bad forwards in Scotland, but at the level.
Is Hudson Edouard not a player who could and has been strong? Hudson Edouard not strongly been linked with a.
I think he'd probably be the exception. I'm not going to speak too much about the Scottish game. Just haven't seen enough of it. I'm interested in terms of the conversation about Shane. I think Gary's right in terms of the amount of time Shane's going to be spending defending in a Celtic jersey, going to be in stark contrast to what he's experienced at Brighton over the past couple of years. But I'd flip that around somewhat and say that in a Celtic jersey, he's certainly going to have more opportunity to maybe improve's not the best word, but just kind of sharpen up his footballing skills in terms of being on the ball and his ability to maybe pass into midfield and kind of play through the lines. I think that's something that Stephen's trying to do with the Ireland team, and at Celtic he's going to have plenty of the ball in his own halfway line, plenty of opportunity to like I said, maybe improve that side of his game, which is what Stephen is asking from him in an Ireland jersey. He's going to be playing a lot more closer to the halfway line. Celtic are going to be dominating opposition teams, so he's going to have to learn to defend higher up the pitch, maybe against kind of counter-attack, which kind of a lot of the times that's what Celtic do. Teams will sit deep and look to counter-attack on them. So I think Shane's experienced enough now. If he was a young player developing, learning the game, and he went up there at 22, 23 to Celtic, maybe I'll be a little bit more concerned. But I think he's at an age now, he's got a vast amount of experience behind him. So I wouldn't be as concerned maybe as Gary. I understand the argument. I think it's a fair one in terms of playing against the best. He's right in what he's saying. Playing against the very best week in, week out, instinctively, it sharpens you up. Lads, it really does. I know today I went from Championship football to Premier League, and straight away you're like, wow, this is a different level.
Yeah,
it's not that people are necessarily stronger and necessarily faster, but in terms of the quality of the movement, clever, intelligent players. Yeah, exactly.
Collectively, it's a much bigger challenge. There's no way you can drop your concentration levels at any point during the game.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. And people make type of runs you don't see before. You know, it's not kind of standard runs and kind of straight lines, like the unexpected things. And particularly the lads in the Premiership, strikers who come in from the continent. I remember the first foreign lads I played. I remember playing against Hernan Crespo.
Tony Yeboah.
No, it's only about a bit more straight lines, to be honest with you. But remember Hernan Crespo, I played against him once. He played for Chelsea, and Crespo wasn't a great athlete. You know, he's a little bit kind of lumpy, you know, the Argentine, good-looking lad. Yeah, but I went out to Stamford Bridge, and for the first 20 minutes, my head was spinning. You
playing centre-back or right-back?
It's centre-back.
Right.
The quality of his run, the quality, the timing of his runs was absolutely killing me, Ger. I'll be checking my shoulder, I'll be seeing him, he's there. I take my eyes off him. As soon as I took my eyes off him, bang, he was gone. So like within a second or a split second, by the time my eyes went back to him, he was across me and in behind. The first couple of times he did it, he just left me. Sometimes he didn't get the ball didn't arrive. But I remember looking at it thinking, wow, I've never experienced this. I'm gonna have to modify my approach here. I'm just gonna have to get better.
So what do you do?
It's just awareness, really, to be honest with you. As soon as you see it once or twice, then you're aware of it. Maybe you have to adjust your position slightly.
That's what I was going to say. So he forces you to change your position. All of a sudden, everybody around you who defines himself by their relationship with you, so the right back is changing and your centre back partner is changing as well. Going, what's going on here? Why is Kenny moving?
But that's the same. You could take that to any sport, like the higher level, the level that you go up. You know, as long as you're kind of open minded, you're quite intelligent, you can assess situations, you understand, you absorb information.
Yeah.
Generally, you better yourself. So that's an obvious thing. So Gary's using Shane Duffy as example, kind of going up to Celtic as opposed to what he's been used to in the Premiership. I think that's a pretty obvious argument. Not necessarily means as if you're talking down Scottish Premiership or the Scottish League. It's just a totally different football environment that he's going into. But like I said, I think it'll help him in some ways. He'll kind of have plenty of the ball at his feet in his own half the pitch. Teams backing off him, so he's going to have to make decisions now, Jared, in terms of passing forward and the quality of his passing back to front. Can he step into midfield play? He can have more touches on the ball and more opportunity maybe to showcase that side of his game, Shane, which he hasn't had at maybe Brighton during his time. He's been defending on the edge of his box, kind of playing counter-attacking football. Not so much last year under Potter. It was a different style of play. But prior to that, he's been showing his talents in terms of ability to defend the penalty box, tackles, winning headers, etc., that type of thing. And Shane's very strong when he's on the edge of his box in terms of defending the penalty box. But it's going to be a slightly different test. He's not going to be tested as much defensively at Celtic in those respects, but he will have the opportunity to maybe to showcase that side of his game potential that we haven't seen in a Brighton jersey. Maybe his footballing strength. Some people are maybe questioning that at the moment.
It's going to be swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he's aware of that as well. Duffy is well aware of the questions that are there. He came into the press conference after the game against Finland last Sunday and brought it up off his own steam several times of people keep saying, I can't play this style of football. I guess the worry is that he's given a false sense of security, Kenny, in Scotland, that, as you say, he has more of the ball, but he's got all the time in the world to do something with it that may not be there in international football. Or is international football that fast? Like, is international football a big step up? Like, you're talking about going up against Hernan Crespo. You don't see too many strikers, say, from Slovakia that we're going to be playing against, or from Wales that we're going to be playing against, at Ireland's level at the moment, that are at quite that level.
Yeah, but the basic fundamentals apply. I'm not, don't get overly carried away in terms of Shane's football and ability. So that's kind of not so much a huge issue for me. The last two games for Ireland for me was just in terms of just Shane's relationship with the fullback, with Matt. And also in terms of the defensive screen in front of him, I thought he was at times actually left a little bit isolated. So I'd have issue just in terms potentially the starting position, the whole defensive line, to be honest with you, in terms of how high up the pitch they were, and just distances really, technical points really, distances between him and Matt, and just decision making, when to squeeze, when to drop into the space, and also a bit of protection. I think at times you can get a bit more protection from the midfielders in front as well. So that was me. For me, was a small concern the last two games for Ireland. I wouldn't be like panic stations in terms of all of a sudden Shane Duffy can't play international football. Shane's an experienced player, and he'll be sitting down with the coaching staff for Ireland next time around. They'll be sitting down with all the defenders saying, right, we can't get exposed like we were before. Matt, whoever it is, Seamus, Coleman, got to make sure you narrow up here. We're not too high up the pitch. Don't leave ourselves open to that ball in behind. James McCarthy, get across, give that little bit of protection as well, nice and compact defensively. They're the answers. The answer isn't like, oh, Shane Duffy's got to liven up. The answer is coming from a few different areas. It's kind of a, it's a group thing. It's the whole collective that has to improve. It's not just a case of Shane Duffy's got to defend better.
Yeah. No, 100%. Let's actually ask that question about who he's going to be playing with and the situation at Spurs, because we can talk about Spurs and Everton, and we can also talk about the context of that right-back battle. There's something terribly comforting in the cosy familiarity of Mourinho's long-standing tradition of blaming everyone but himself for his team's failings, says Julian Salmon on Twitter this morning. Straight after the game, it's the back page of all the papers, Mourinho's essentially calling his own team lazy. Said that Matt Doherty wasn't fit just yet because of the off-season. Nothing to do with him. Nothing to do with him, basically.
Yeah, no, I don't think you have to take a certain amount of responsibility in terms of the physical condition of your players. That's important. We saw that kind of post lockdown in terms of the teams who had actually managed themselves better. Physical conditioning was better. Actually had an advantage in those that remaining kind of 6 weeks of the season. Yeah, probably Southampton, probably a good example of that standout team. I thought they look sharp. I don't know what work they've been doing behind the scenes, but they had an edge on other teams. And pre-season's the same. People say you don't peak until maybe a month, 6 weeks into the season. That's fair enough. I didn't see the game yesterday, to be honest. I was working on the early one. I didn't get home for the second. But you've got to be careful as a manager. You really do, in terms of you point the finger at your players. The players will suck it up to a point. If it's warranted and if it's kind of justified, you never like hearing a full stop, Jerry, to be honest with you. Even if it is justified, you don't like to hear it from your manager, particularly publicly, kind of calling out your players. But you'll kind of suck it up maybe once or twice, but can't be happening too often, because then players get a sense of, hold on, this fella's deflecting, and that's when the whole trust breaks down between and respect between players and a manager. And once that happens, it's very difficult to get it back. So Mourinho's going to be a little bit careful in terms of how he approaches this.
You did the game, Nathan. How bad were Spurs?
Oh, very, very poor. Just way off the pace. Like, best Everton performance I've seen in quite a while, but they looked at a different level, whether that was fitness or whether it was desire, but there was a total different intensity, particularly around the middle of midfield, where you would have thought Harry Winks and Højbjerg would give them a little bit of something, but they were totally dominated by the three. And Harry Kane barely got a touch of the ball. Like, Dele Alli is taken off at half-time. Seamus Coleman, a young man's son in his pocket. Lucas Moura barely involved. So it was hard to pick a Spurs player who actually played well. They have had difficulties in pre-season, though. Like, touched on Matt Doherty. He's on holidays for 3 weeks. He goes straight into Ireland camp. He plays 2 matches. He's back. He probably doesn't train with Spurs for the first time till Wednesday. Now, whether that means he can't be at peak physical condition and Jose Mourinho is blaming the player for that, or just admitting that this is going to be an issue for the first few weeks, I guess that's going to play out. But there's definitely an issue in terms of fitness and attitude. But there's also, I think, for Spurs, I don't know what you feel about this, Kenny, in terms of just the quality of players they have. If you look at where they were 3-4 seasons ago, like Danny Rose 3-4 seasons ago, major step up from where Ben Davies is now. Jan Vertonghen, a big step up on Eric Dyer at their midfield. They had the quality of somebody like Moussa Dembele in there. They don't have that anymore. Like, and Dele Alli has stalled massively over the past couple of years. And Harry Kane, for a variety of reasons, injuries and the quality of players behind them, just isn't scored anywhere near as many goals. So the Spurs are in a bit of a state right now.
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of recruitment is an issue for them, has been for some time. And the problem isn't, you're talking about Matt in the right back position, I've no problem with that. A bit of physical fitness, match sharpness will serve him very well. I look at Spurs across the top of the pitch and I haven't got any particular worries. Kane, Son, Moura, Lamela, Lowe, so Bergwijn, I think, was a very good boy actually in the middle half of last season. I think he's going to be a very good player, money well spent. But the massive problem they have, and have had, possibly saying it for about a year or so now, is central midfield. They haven't got anybody who can defend. They haven't got anybody with real kind of tenacity in there with a physical presence who can go make tackles and kind of dominate that area of the pitch. I'm not talking about in football in terms of dominate in possession of the ball. I'm talking about who can get around the pitch and make tackles and physically impose himself and have that real kind of defensive mindset. Now, they brought Højbjerg in. I scratched my head a little bit. Højbjerg's a decent enough player, but wouldn't come into that category for me. Alan's the one for me. I thought was a great boy by Ancelotti. I've seen him play at Napoli a lot. He's been out of the Napoli team, but not because he's been playing badly. It's just they have a dearth of talent in there at the moment at Napoli. Just couldn't get enough playing time. He's the type of player Spurs needed. He only cost an extra 4 or 5 million than what they paid for Højbjerg. The very experienced player, smart, wily operator. Just breaks up opposition attacks. It's disciplined, holds the centre of the pitch, gives protection to the back four. And the Spurs back four need a bit of protection. I mean, centre half pairing of Vertonghen and Dora for me doesn't fill me with confidence. Vertonghen's best days are behind them. Dora, I'm still yet to be convinced in terms of him as a centre half and a back forward in terms of mobility as well. So for me, the fundamental issues in terms of recruitment are centre midfield and at centre half. They still haven't resolved that. And Mourinho's been there long enough now to assess it. I think he knows it. He's brought Højbjerg in, but I'm just not convinced Højbjerg's good enough. Winks is a tidy footballer, a good little technician, but he can't defend. You can't progress as a club if you've got aspirations to challenge for Europe and Champions League. You can't do that with a midfield without a player in there who can actually knows how to defend. I mean, honestly,
Mourinho knows this too, right?
Yeah, and it's the way he actually likes to use traditional the Mourinho's team, that central area of the pitch. You know what I mean? He locks down that central area of the pitch. Players in it, but by that I mean he puts players in there who understand how to defend that area of the pitch, who can break up opposition attacks, disrupt opposition teams, and don't allow opposition teams to dominate in that area of the pitch. Screen the back four, cut down those passing lanes for opposition teams, and just kind of almost suffocate teams. This Tottenham team just haven't got the players to do that. And if Højbjerg's the answer in central midfield, I'd really be worried. So I like what I'm seeing higher up the pitch. I think Matt's going to be a very good signing for them. But for me, they're short in key areas of the pitch, centre midfield in particular, and centre half. And I think we'll see more movement there. We'll have to in terms of players coming in. Is the boy? Who's this centre midfield they bought for massive money, 65 million? Ndombele, yeah.
He's got off the bench from Matt Doherty yesterday.
It looks as if he's over. His relations, another one whose relations broken down with Mourinho.
He was brutal when he came on.
Yeah, but his attitude's gone. You can see, this is what I'm talking about, Mourinho. Once you lose that kind of trust element with your players, that's it. You can't get it back. No. And that happened in the middle of last season in the belly. You could see that in terms of the lads' body lines with public comments from Mourinho, maybe questioning his mentality and stuff and professionalism, etc.
They don't seem to respond very well to this in Jose Mourinho's world. I don't know why he continues to do it.
Yeah, no, on occasion, but it's how the other players perceive it as well, Jerry. If it's in the eyes of the other players, if it's not warranted in terms of the criticism, you call out one of your players and they feel as if, oh, that's unfair, that's one of my teammates. It's not just about losing that one player, it's about the rest of the team as well. They don't like to hear that as well, a team out being called out as well. So he's got to be very careful, Mourinho, really does. He's on a bit of a knife edge with the squad there.
It's like Tommy Tiernan coaching the under-12s with the truth will set you free. There's a bit too much truth from Jose Mourinho here for these Spurs players. Little pat in the back the odd time.
You were raving about Seamus Coleman's performance. Kenny hasn't seen it yet, so just explain to anybody else who hasn't seen it this morning how well he played, Nathan.
I don't think we should be surprised because Coleman will have been disgusted to have been dropped from the Ireland team. He'll sit out in front and do his press conference and do his duties, but the character he will have wanted to have proven a point, particularly up against Matt Doherty yesterday. Defensively, did everything right from the start of the game. Heung-min Son broke free down the left-hand side, brings it in, cutting in from the end line. Coleman tracks him. You're waiting for the tackle to come in inside the area. Just bides his time, and just as Heung-min Son's about to pull the trigger to pull it back, Coleman times his tackle to perfection, ricochets off Heung-min Son, and he just kicked on from there. Last gasp tackles, powerful headers from set pieces, but it was more in an attacking sense. He got forward more than I've seen Seamus Coleman in the last 2 or 3 years. I think because of the quality they've added in midfield, he felt he could trust them a little bit more. But he must have made 7 or 8 breaks into the Spurs penalty area. Had a couple of shots from the edge of the area, like the ball's popping out where it goes up towards Calvert-Lewin. Spurs defender gets there, and suddenly it's Seamus Coleman appearing 25 yards out with a first-time volley. And he just looked full of energy. Again, maybe it is the fitness side of things. Maybe he had a very good pre-season. But yeah, as good as I've seen Seamus Coleman play in the last 2 or 3 years, and as good as Everton have played in the last 2 or 3 years, their supporters are going to be waking up this morning pretty happy with life. They're going to be wandering to go out Stanley Park, bollock naked. We're back, baby. We're back. But there have been too many false dawns for Everton over the last few years to get overly excited after one match. But like Kenny touched on Alan and what he has in the middle of midfield, and just that class and control and energy to get around. Decore has a lot of that as well. And then James Rodriguez. Okay, it's day one. Even Carlo Ancelotti was trying to calm everybody down. Not sure he kept the ball away. Like time and time again, lovely little touch, take him away from a midfielder, and floats this crossfield ball to Richarlison, inch perfect. So there's a lot to like about this Everton side after one game against the pretty terrible Spurs. But Coleman was back.
Yeah. Well, I just say in terms of Everton, you see the difference those signings in central midfield have made. Alan and Decore, high energy, physically aggressive, box to box. You know, can compete but also get forward. Those third man runs are really energised that midfield area. 2 key signings, and they haven't paid fortunes for these players. This is exactly what Tottenham need, and they've gone and signed Højbjerg for 15 million. That's the kind of contrast that I'm talking about. I hear Nathan talking about Seamus Coleman, but to be honest with you, I probably don't even I don't need to see the game. I mean, I know what type of player Seamus is, so that doesn't surprise me whatsoever. I've loved Seamus' evolution as a player since he came over to England. Came over really as attack-minded kind of full-back. David Moyes actually played him right side midfield, I think, initially, because he understood the defensive side to his game. He really needed to improve and develop, but he actually did that. And over the years, I've really watched him improve as a defender, 1v1 situations, understanding the game as a right-back, positional self-distance to your full-back, etc. You know, working in tandem with your wide player. And you've seen him improve and develop into really kind of outstanding. I'd say probably for me, the best in the world. I've said it maybe 3 or 4 years, as good as anything in terms of in and out possession. So the conversation of late with Matt Doherty has been a very interesting one. We're lucky really to have players of this quality competing for the one spot we believe at the moment. So Stephen, it looks as if he's given Matt the jersey, and I can understand that. Matt is so productive in the opposition half of the pitch. He's absolutely phenomenal in terms of what he's been doing at Wolves for the past couple of years. And in terms of Stephen's style of play, how he's looking to play, it didn't surprise me whatsoever Matt has got the jersey. But I've never written off Seamus, and I've always felt potentially if Ireland were going into a game, and this is the Slovakia game, and I said it prior to the last 2 Ireland games, if we needed that type of game demanded a player at full-back, we needed to play a best defender at right-back in that particular game to really kind of narrow up and shore up that side of the pitch. For whatever reason, one-off game against Slovakia, we need to win to get to a final potential against Bosnia or Northern Ireland. I need me best. You looked at the opposition, Slovakia. They got a little bit of talent over there. Just need to lock down that area of the pitch. Who am I going to play? I think there is an argument, and this before the last 2 games, that maybe Seamus plays in that game. That's not to say Matt Doherty can't defend. Of course he can. But Seamus, for me, has really developed that side of his game in terms of narrowing up to his centre-half, talk and communication. Seamus is a talker. I don't know if Seamus personally can see it, but can sit on the pitch. He's always in the ear of the centre-half. And that's what you need as a centre-half. You need a full-back who's he's almost a parrot. You need a parrot playing alongside you on your shoulder, constantly squawking into your ear, giving you information. Man, drop off, squeeze, man on your shoulder, drop in, I'm with you.
Is there no way we can play these 2 players together?
Not in a 4-3-3 we can't, unless you're going to make an argument for one of them popping in at left back, which isn't going to happen. No, you've got to play 3-4-3, 3-5-2.
None of them can play in the 3 in midfield?
No.
What about the 3 up top? What about playing Matt Doherty right up top?
No, we did it. We had a look at it, Gibraltar, on the make, and it just didn't work. It's a totally different position.
But Gibraltar is bad evidence.
Well, if you can impact the game against a team like Gibraltar, no disrespect to them.
The whole team was crap that night.
It's not just that. It's what's required. It's a totally different position you're operating. You're starting position 20 yards higher up the pitch, receiving the ball. You're on the half turn with your back to goal, as opposed to constantly receiving a little bit deeper, receiving the ball and travelling up the pitch with the ball. You have to play in more congested areas high up the pitch. It's a far more demanding, far more difficult role than an orthodox wing back or an orthodox full back position. I'm not saying they can't do it. I mean, they're good enough to do a job there. But in terms to actually excel in that area of the pitch, I don't think you're being fair to either player.
Callum Robinson or Colm O'Dowd is the question, and you don't think?
Well, I think there's an argument for it. If you want to lock down that area, it depends what you're looking for. If you're playing against a team, you're just saying, I want to play my 2 best defenders there and absolutely lock down that side of the pitch. Nobody can get through us. Well, I think there's an argument there for potentially like Matt and Seamus there. But I think kind of
be a negative thing though, as opposed to there's no way it could be a positive having.
I don't see it long term. For me, the argument going into the Slovakia game is how do you want to play? Do you still want to get your fullbacks higher? Are you going to demand of your fullbacks the higher starting position and get higher up the pitch? And ask your centre halves to play a little bit more 1v1 at times on the counter and kind of open yourself up a little bit more. I still think the answer for Matt, it's not to say, I'm sure Stephen will sit down the coaching staff with Matt next time and say, look, Matt, we're just going to be a little bit more careful in terms of how we're defending. We're just really going to have to narrow up. You're going to be aware of that run off Shane's shoulder. Might say to the whole defensive line, we're all going to drop 10 yards, defend a little bit deeper. Like I said, the whole collective answer. So, but I think it's an interesting discussion, and it's not a put down for anyone, or certainly not Matt or Seamus. It's the fact that we've got two outstanding players here, and we're lucky to have them. But there's small differences in terms of their makeup, as footballers, their strengths and weaknesses. And it's a case of this Slovakia game I see as a standalone. I don't see this as another game in terms of the development of the squad. We're moving forward. For me, this almost separates itself, this Slovakia game. We've got to win it. It's a one-off game, 90 minutes, go over there, get the job done, keep a clean sheet. Clean sheet, we win that game and win a playoff final. It's as simple as that. So what team, for me, actually, I'd actually roll it back to me. I'd say, what team can we put on the pitch against Slovakia that guarantees a clean sheet, that we have the most confidence in, that can actually squeeze the life, suffocate the life out of Slovakia, limit their opportunities and goal, keep a clean sheet, and we'll go and score at the other end, and we'll be in the playoff final.
Sounds pretty good.
What about the guy who's the best defender in the world right now then, Virgil van Dijk? Confident, arrogant? Did he veer into cockiness at the weekend with his performance against Leeds?
He veers into cockiness every week, every game he plays.
He's got a lot to be cocky about.
But I might have said this last year. The only thing I worry about him is that kind of God complex. I said it occasionally. That's what I'm talking about. That supreme arrogance on the football pitch, which is one of his strengths. Don't get me wrong.
It's very Dutch.
That presence. Yeah. It's that presence that he has. He's such a good player, and he knows it, which is no bad thing. That kind of self-confidence exudes confidence. But at times, if you just allow it to get just out of hand a little bit, then we saw what we saw at the weekend. The ball over the top, that kind of, it was like, it wasn't a hook clearance. He was over the shoulder. That technique to try and, just took that ball over Bamford into...
It's a bit like Dennis Bergkamp against Argentina in the World Cup. It was almost like he was trying to take it down a bit, but it's like...
But the level of difficulty, and if that was me in that situation, I'm just literally trying to kick it over my shoulder. I'm thinking, can I even make contact with this ball? I'm probably going to let that ball bounce, but to actually take it on the volley...
it out for a corner.
Yeah, by and large, you're just looking to make good contact and put it out for a throw-in. Just make good contact. It's not easy. Yeah, he's trying to take with the outside of his right foot, almost a reverse sweep over Bamford. But this is what I'm talking about. That very occasionally this kind of creeps into his game. But it wasn't just kind of Van Dijk. The Liverpool kind of defensive line was a little bit kind of not shambolic, but it's been there for a long time. We probably spoke about it last year. Every week they're winning Liverpool, and I'm saying, I just think defensively, that high line, their decision making not dropping off. Just got to be a little bit careful. That I almost seem to be saying it every month. But Liverpool are winning games, so people are laughing at you, thinking, "What are you talking about?"
They're still winning games. They're getting away with it. But there was which goal was it? Leeds' first goal or Leeds' second goal, where the ball went to the brilliant crossfield.
Harrison. Yeah, so this is what I'm talking about. So Calvin Davis, I think, receives the ball off the two centre-halves in space. Liverpool don't get that pressure on him high. Torrens has a touch, his head is up now, no pressure. And the Liverpool back for like 2 yards inside their own half. They're that high up the pitch. And I actually think Alexander-Arnold made the good decision. He actually dropped off early into the space. Because as a full-back, I'm in trouble. There's no pressure on the ball. 30 yards of space in behind me. I've got to drop in here. And it's exactly what he did. The problem was Gomez and the rest of the defensive line didn't drop with him. So when Harrison took that touch on his inside and took him on the inside, Joe Gomez should have been walking across there. And if not winning the tackle, at least just planting his body there and showing him across the pitch and buying a bit of time. But Gomez was sprinting back because he hadn't made the decision to drop it early enough. He's sprinting back now, Jer. So when Harrison touches that ball on his inside and goes past him, he's out of the game because he's sprinting a full pelt now. He can't put the brakes on. So this is what I'm talking about. I think Liverpool have to. I've been saying this for a long time. I mean, I think it's actually quite a simple thing to resolve. But clearly, they don't see it that way, the managers and the coaches. They can't see it. They must be happy to take that. It's a calculated risk, like everything in a football pitch. It's a calculated risk that you take.
The trade-off.
Risk and reward.
Yeah.
But Leeds exploited it. Leeds had a look at that and thought, we're going to get runners going in there. We're going to put the ball in there early in behind, which a lot of teams don't do with Liverpool. Played in front, played sideways. They went, no, the space there, we're going to put it in there, and we're going to get runners going in there. And Liverpool looked very average across that defensive line, looked very exposed.
It's going to make for an exciting season. The Arsenal fans think that Mikel Arteta is a genius. Small sample size, he's already won a trophy, wins the first game of the season. The signings look good. Can he give the Arsenal fans something to cheer about?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I'm all in. I mean, I don't know about genius, to be honest with you. He's organised the team, he's coached the team, and that's what they've been crying out for a couple of years. Good quality coaching.
At Arsenal, that counts as a genius.
Possibly so, but that's what they've got now. I like the look of them, I like the shape of the team. I think they're in balance. I think they could improve the team. Actually, the personnel that they have, probably need maybe a bit of strength, central midfield area. I think potentially maybe in terms of more acquisitions, but the attitude of the players' mentality is absolutely fantastic. I'd reserve judgment on the new players. Obviously, Gabriel come in at a decent debut. I temper it a little bit in terms of the quality of the opposition they're up against. Fulham was really disappointed at them. Made it very easy for Arsenal. But Arsenal are in a good place. Some outstanding young talent there. Saka didn't even start. Martinelli, people have stopped talking about, probably the best of the lot. He's going to have to come back in. He's a number 9. He can play across the line. Still feels there's a potential. Lacazette, I have a bit of a feeling Lacazette could end up going out the door. Aubameyang down the centre, because you've got such talent. Pepe, Saka, Martinelli still got to come. He's got to make a pathway for these players to play. So they're in a great place, Arsenal. I wouldn't temper that excitement, but still don't think it's quite perfect yet. I think, like I said, that central midfield area is one I think potentially can they get another one in. Sabalas is a tidy little player. But again, I'll probably go back to maybe it's just me, is it? That central midfield area in terms of that kind of real kind of physicality, physical presence. Xhaka doesn't give you that lovely left foot, but just can't. He's not a mover. He's not moving and a groover in that area of the pitch. El Nelly's not too bad, actually. He's come from nowhere, come back into nowhere. He's come from. It's amazing, really. But Thomas Partey, they were linked to it. That type of player. Box, that decorated box to box, absolute, machine in terms of leg, leg speed, that type of thing, tackle, competitiveness. That type of player in there, I think, would complement those other players. But no, they're in a great place.
That's much closer than they have been in a number of years to actually being competitive. 0879 180 180 is the number if you want to get in touch with us here this morning, or you can use the hashtag OTB AM. It's time for the papers.
OTB AM.
I'll start with the Irish Independent. I'll start with the OTB Sports. Pub talkers are now on social media. The issues facing the club. Again, this is a conversation that happened in the paper review, which you can subscribe to the OTB highlights and get the podcast of that there. Dominic Thiem overcomes 2-set deficit to clinch maiden Grand Slam at the US Open. Brian Kerr talking about why Seamus Coleman is currently edging out Matt Doherty for Ireland. And Jose Mourinho says Matt Doherty and some of the Spurs team are not fit after they went down 1-0 in that game yesterday. So the Irish Independent, their back page, an interesting photograph of celebrating supporters. Not sure that they're actually observing social distancing, but anyway, these are the Mahiri supporters celebrating after they beat Crossmaglen in the Armagh Senior Football Championship final yesterday. There's a great stat in one of the papers today: 40 finals for Cross since '95, and this is only their second defeat. GA set to slash player expenses is Colm Key's story. 30% reduction in mileage proposed as part of 7 million cost control measures to support county team preparations. Jose's lazy dig. This is in the back of all of the newspapers. This is the Daily Mail's take on it. The London Times is Mourinho slams lazy team. Mourinho, my team are lazy and unfit. I don't like them, says the Telegraph. I wonder how that's going to go down. The back page of the Guardian. Mourinho's lazy blast. Spurs manager criticises players after Everton start with a bang. The Examiner have again celebrating after Calvert-Lewin's goal. The Everton players' joys in blue is the headline there, and they also have Wonderweld, veteran trainer, lands 9th Irish St. Ledger. So we had him on Friday, the OTB bounce. The Irish Independent sports section, Doherty needs to keep eye on the ball. This is after the criticism from Mourinho yesterday. The Racing Post's Thunder Moon storms into Guinea's frame for Joseph O'Brien on a day when Father Aidan and Brother Dunica also enjoy Group 1 triumphs. Not a bad weekend to be an O'Brien horse trainer. And they also have, it's a fantastic Group 1 double for Dermot Weld as well. And so they're looking at the story there. And attacking intent, Chelsea can throw down early marker. Brighton against Chelsea is tonight's game. And very briefly, just to wrap up the last few here, the Star is, as you would expect, a lazy Sunday. Jose sticks boot into Spurs stars and claims Doherty wasn't fit. Kylian wants out of Paris, says Kylian Mbappe might be on the market for 400 million quid. It's worth it though, right? Yeah, I mean, if any footballer has ever been worth 400 million, it's Kylian Mbappe. And the back page of The Sun is lazy boys, no Matt finish. Matt Doherty had a Spurs debut to forget as Jose Mourinho questioned the 15 million man's fitness. Front of The Sun, Delaney's own goal, FIFA 5 million sparked downfall. This is exclusive extracts from the book Champagne Football. And the back page of The Mirror, unready, unfit, lazy. Does that not reflect badly on the manager? When your team isn't ready, your job is to manage the team. There's a clue in the name.
Yeah, it's amazing, really. Contrast that Gerard Mourinho his first 5, 6, 7 years as a manager in terms of how tight the dressing room was. Players absolutely loved him. I never remember a story coming out, Jose Mourinho, in that time where a player that publicly come out and criticise him. And this was players, the whole squad, not getting games. They absolutely loved him, and he loved his players. And you never heard this type of public criticism. It's only really the last 3 or 4 years. I know what it is, a bit of frustration, a bit of anger, a bit of bitterness, whatever it is. But he's been a lot more vocal in terms of criticising the squad and the team. It's really surprised me, to be honest. I'd question his management, his actual man management over the last couple of years at his previous couple of clubs. And I think it has been a reason why he's ended up out the door, because he's lost that kind of connection, that kind of chemistry which he always had with his players.
Okay, and then finally from now, the Irish Times. Saracens showdown looming large on the horizon for Leinster. This is Jay Thorney's piece. Little time for Leinster to celebrate comprehensive win over Ulster as huge game closing in. Okay, what are we at? 9:40 this morning here on OTB AM. Live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Time for our Gillette Pressure Rankings.
For me, it was a self-imposed pressure.
Was I under pressure? No.
Yeah, they're under pressure. Everyone's under pressure.
OTB AM's Pressure Rankings with Gillette.
And the big pressure.
Nathan, you're under a bit of pressure this week, because normally we'd have Owen doing these, and obviously he's young and funny, and you're old and not funny. So how are you going to get on?
Oof. Harsh, Ger. Very harsh. I didn't realise that a comedic element was required for this. So you're right. I am under massive pressure now, because I've just given you 5 names here and was just going to basically reel them off. So now I'm trying to come up with some jokes on the spot.
Go for it. I'm looking forward to this.
Kenny, you can help me out here.
Pressure,
Kenny.
Nathan.
So my Gillette Pressure Rankings for this week. Number 5, Leinster, Ger. Massive pressure ahead of the game against Saracens on Saturday. They've won 25 straight games. They can only bottle it from here. They're the best team in Europe by a country mile. Do not screw this up.
Spoken like a true Mayo man who, anytime he sees the opportunity for victory, automatically clutches defeat from its jaws.
Good comeback.
My obvious fear for Leinster is that they are now powered by a Mayo man. Absolutely powered by a Mayo man in Caelan Doris. So I just hope that he can see this through. Leinster, as I said, 2 great teams in Ireland, Leinster and Leinster Reserves. But yeah, you got to go and finish the job. An unbeaten season, the pressure is going to start mounting.
Yeah,
so, Leinster, number 5.
Or glory, and they become the greatest Irish club team of all time. Number 4.
Phil Mickelson. It is US Open week, Ger. Winged foot. Phil Mickelson is playing in his 29th US Open this week. It is the only major championship he has never won, and this is the course where he came so close. He went down the 18th in 2006. Bogey would have got him a playoff. Double bogey in one of the great major finishes where himself, Harrington, Monty all collapsed over the closing holes, and Jeff Ogilvy somehow held on. Mickelson will be the oldest ever major winner. He's over 50. He's playing seniors tour now when he feels like it. Played in the Safeway last night, where Stuart Sink won, who hadn't actually won since the 2009 Open Championship at Turnberry. But Phil Mickelson, can he finally do it? I've always felt maybe Mickelson's thing would be the oldest major champion. He's obviously never going to get near Tiger Woods in terms of number of major championships, but Phil just has something about him that can keep going to a old age. And we saw Tom Watson in 2009 contend when he was 59. So Phil has a bit to go yet. But the US Open is the one that has always caused some issues. 6 runners-up finishes for Phil Mickelson at the US Open. He's under pressure this week. He needs to win a US Open. I'm not sure it's going to happen.
Golf Weekly coming a day earlier this week, or is it still on Thursday?
Who knows? The great thing about Golf Weekly is it's weekly, but who knows when.
Okay.
And even then, maybe not even weekly.
Number 3.
Usually. Number 3, Virgil van Dijk. Under a bit of pressure. Liverpool have conceded 3 goals in each of their last 2 home games. And then you think about the match against Arsenal at the end of last season, where he also made a horrendous error. You want to be the best centre-half in the world, you got to start acting like the best centre-half in the world. And you can't go wandering around like you're king of the hill by making mistakes like that. Kenny Cunningham is going to hammer you every day of the week. So he just needs to calm things down a little bit. They got Chelsea next Sunday. It's our live game and off the ball. Chelsea, free scoring. What was it, 5-3 when they met at the end of last season? It's going to be an absolute cracker. Virgil van Dijk needs to calm the hell down.
Okay, Gary Breen is on our pressure rankings. Why is Gary Breen on our pressure rankings? People are unfamiliar with this story, Nathan.
Gary Breen is under massive pressure from Celtic supporters for 2 comments made on Saturday's Off the Ball. Firstly, about Shane Duffy, and Shane Duffy maybe taking a bit of a step down to go and play Scottish football, and well, maybe this might have a negative effect on the Irish national team. And also that not a single Scottish striker playing in the Scottish Premiership would get into a Premier League team. Celtic fans very unhappy, obviously pointing out Odsonne Edouard has been linked with many Premier League teams. And who is Gary Breen? That is what has been popping up on our Twitter feed more than anything else. Who is Gary Breen? Which is somewhat surprising because all I ever hear about is this connection between Celtic and Ireland, this deep-rooted connection. I was even down in Ballymote in Sligo about a month ago, and there is this brilliant memorial to Brother Wilfried. It's a beautiful thing. If you haven't been, it's probably the only reason to go to Ballymote in Sligo. But this is the connection that's there between Celtic and Ireland. Yet, Ireland legend Gary Breen makes some fairly harmless comments, and the Celtic supporters don't even know who he is, it seems. So where's the connection? Where's it all broken down? Thankfully, Gary isn't on social media, as far as I know, unless he has a burner account. But as far as I know, he's not on social media. So I think it's all water off a duck's back.
Kenny, do you have a burner account for when you say outrageous things you can check on how much crap you're getting?
You probably know the answer to that, Jerry. No, I don't. I find it very interesting. The Gary. I actually find it very interesting the conversation about Shane and Celtic. It's a shame, really. It's kind of if it's ending up that way in terms of shouting and screaming. Who's Gary Breen?
It's just people on Twitter, and they're clowns.
Yeah, but we all want the same thing, don't we? Ourselves, Gary, Shane. We're all pushing the same direction in terms of success. Want the Ireland team to be successful. You heard how Gary how highly spoke about Shane Duffy, what he's done in his career so far. So I hope people don't use this as some kind of excuse to making it some kind of problem there between Gary, Shane, or Shane feels as if he's been dug out or held up to ridicule, because that's clearly not the case.
It was the opposite, I think.
Yeah.
One of Gary's other comments at the weekend, just to show what Twitter can be like around football. No, he was talking about Donny van de Beek, and he had the perfect pronunciation of Donny van de Beek, and said how excited he is to see him at Manchester United, having tracked his development at Ajax. And it was, wait a second, the Eredivisie isn't even on Sky anymore, so how could he be claiming to have tracked Donny van de Beek's development by watching a couple of Champions League games, ignoring the fact that Gary Breen, for about the last 5 years, has covered Eredivisie games all across Europe every single week. Yeah. This is the idiotic nature of what you're having to deal with.
Who is at number one in your pressure rankings this week, Nathan?
That's a great question. Hopefully the graphic will come up on screen, Ger, and I'll be able to tell you it is, of course, Jose Mourinho, who has thrown his players under the bus day one. Lazy. Is lazy the worst insult you can get as a footballer, Kenny?
Oh yeah, it's not far off. I've got to be honest with you. Yeah, it's a question your kind of professionalism, really, isn't it?
Yes.
Being lazy is one thing. Saying not quite match fit. I mean, that's not necessarily criticism of your mentality. That can just be a thing where he just physically hasn't been able to do the work. The time limit hasn't been sufficient. But lazy, that implies a lack of attitude, doesn't it? A kind of lack of professionalism on behalf of the players. So that's that hurts. That stings.
He's also going to be under pressure because, Spurs need to somehow improve this season and challenge for Champions League place, and there was no sign of it at all yesterday. And you get the sense Spurs fans knew this was coming. They're a little bit sick of it. Just on the laziness thing, Kenny, because, all right, Matt Doherty, it seemed he was going more with the lack of match fitness, whether he's blaming player or his own staff for that, I'm not sure. But a lot of people look at Matt Doherty's running style when he's trying to get back, and that he's not in a full-on sprint. He's not sweating buckets trying to get back. Can you have a full-on sprint but not look like you're on a full-on sprint, that you are just... Can you be moving at full speed without looking like you're moving at full speed?
No, I think that's part of your armoury as a defender. First of all, I'd say the relevance to me is the distance you've got to travel back. That comes into we're talking about how high Matt's been asked to travel up the pitch, the distance between him and his centre back. You surrender possession of the ball. Does he have to make 5 or 10 yards? Does he have to make 15 or 20 yards? That's a massive difference. And physically being able to make up the ground consistently as well. Obviously, there's issues in terms of Matt's fitness. I understand that, so I'm not worried about that whatsoever. Probably more prevalent would be how Matt's been asked to play by Mourinho, how high a position he's been asked to take up. And if he's been asked to play 15, 20 yards in advance of his centre half, and they turn over possession, and Tottenham centre halves are getting exposed 1v1, you can't blame Matt Doherty. That comes down to the tactical setup of the team and what he's actually been asked to do. So they're kind of things that we're not quite privy to. But I mean, I wish I could move like Matt Doherty in around the opposition penalty box. I wish I had that kind of instinctive feel that he has in terms of positions to attack, decisions making, his combination play. The quality he has in the last third of the pitch is phenomenal.
Yeah.
He's almost got a centre forward's instincts for me at times when he travels into the opposition penalty. I've seen him arrive in the penalty box.
Stick him in the front
time
three.
in a row.
Come on. You're talking yourself into it. You know it's the right thing.
But what I'm saying, he's very unique. We should appreciate. I hate the fact we're not talking people down. It's a natural discussion for me. Yeah, in terms of strengths and weakness. But Matt's strengths in the last, I think, are unique. I don't remember an Irish player, full back, doing the things that he does in the opposition in the last third of the pitch. Quality delivery, coming on the inside, travelling into traffic, no problem.
Right.
That bit of confidence that he has, I think we should celebrate it.
Jose Mourinho, top of our Gillette Pressure Rankings for the week that's in it, and that is the end of your Gillette Pressure Rankings this week.
OTB AM's Pressure Rankings with Gillette.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Okay, time for Deal or No Deal. I think we have Phil with us as well. Phil, good morning to you.
How you doing, lads?
So, the Sunday Times reported that France forward Kylian Mbappe has told Paris Saint-Germain he intends to leave at the end of this season to further his career elsewhere. It's on the back page of all the tabloids today as well. He's targeting a move to La Liga or the Premier League. Where would his most likely Premier League destination be, and what would he bring to the top flight?
Well, it seems everyone's going to Chelsea at this stage, or you get linked to Manchester City. They seem to be the only two clubs. Manchester United would obviously love to have a player like Kylian Mbappe. Who wouldn't? But you would imagine that if he's going to go anywhere, it's Real Madrid. It's always been talked about Real Madrid. If Zidane is still there as well, there's the French connection, and maybe he wants to get out of PSG a bit quicker because they're in the relegation zone, Ger. They're struggling. 2 defeats from 2, and obviously there was a major result last night with all the players getting sent off between PSG and Marseille, Neymar included. But we figured that obviously he wanted to win the Champions League with PSG, thought maybe this was going to be the year, didn't happen, and you'd imagine they won't get a better chance to do it, so he goes off to Real Madrid, I think.
Okay, we'll see if Real Madrid have the cash at the end of the year. It's being reported Chelsea could sell 4 players in an attempt to raise funds for a move for West Ham United's England midfielder Declan Rice. Chelsea not already done enough business, Phil, or do they need this one last piece?
Well, obviously the goalkeeper in the next few days, that's a positive for them because it hasn't worked for Kepa. It's very hard for a goalkeeper to get that confidence back. And defence, we know that there's going to be a few debuts handed out this evening, but Thiago Silva isn't one of them. So there's a weakness in centre half. Declan Rice obviously plays midfield, but you can also play him as a centre half. And there was a lot of people looking at the body language of Declan Rice the other night, saying that it just didn't look right, and maybe he wants to go back to Chelsea. That's obviously where he was as a youth player.
If you're not for you, what do you?
No, I like him. I've said it, he's a good fit for Chelsea. I don't think West Ham can afford to let him go. They're absolutely fans there. I live in that part of London. They're absolutely screaming. They have been for quite some time. There's been no players coming the door apart from Souček's very good signing. That Dean Gannon, the young boys, gone up to West Brom. Nobody's happy there. The place is an absolute uproar. As much as they might want to get Declan out the doors, 70, 80 million, whatever it is, I don't think they can do it. From a PR point of view, I don't think they can let him go this year at the moment, unless they got 3 or 4 top-class signings ready to come in. They're going to.
One of the owners of West Ham once make his money from pornography. I'm not sure public relations is one of the key things for the.
They're smart enough. They're smart enough. There. Don't underestimate those owners. They understand.
Kenny, where do you see him ending up? In terms of, like, Giles is convinced that he ends up being a centre back.
Yeah, no, I think he can do both. I think John's right potentially going forward. You saw Little play for England midweek. I saw the first half, and he still needs to improve the quality of his pass. He needs to get braver with his passing in terms of breaking the lines with forward passes rather than that continual sideways pass, and just be content to keep the play moving. He's very secure in there defensively. He gives a good screen. But I probably agree with Johnny long term. I think potentially centre half. He can play in the 3 anywhere across the back 3, and obviously left side in a 4. So I think he is a good fit for Chelsea because he gives you that options in those 2 areas. I think Manchester United as well for me. I think he can play that holding midfield position, and he could slot in left side alongside Harry Maguire. So they're the two teams for me straight away where I think the teams radically improve if Declan Rice comes to the football club. And he will go. It's only a matter of time. I just don't think West Ham can let him go at the moment, because fans will literally burn the place down.
Okay. AS in Spain are reporting Spain left-back Sergio Reguilon, 23, would prefer a loan spell at Sevilla over a move to Manchester United. Meanwhile, L'Equipe are saying United are prepared to pay 23 million for Monaco's French defender Benoit Badiachil. Kenny, how crucial is it that Manchester United sign a defender before the transfer deadline next month?
Top class. Say top class. If I'm not talking about they have to spend 80 million, but they need a centre half alongside Maguire. Now that they've bought Maguire, they've got to stick with him. That's the thing. I wouldn't have bought Harry Maguire. I've got to be honest with you. I wouldn't have spent that money and bought Harry Maguire because of the quality. I would look for different types of qualities in the centre half, that dominant centre half. But they have him now. Maguire is the captain. They're going to stick with him. So you have to get the best player to play alongside him. And they need now a player. They need a powerhouse there. They need someone physically athletic, defend 1v1, just to complement Maguire, a lovely ball player as he is. So I'm not saying I think there's some very good centre halves out there. Don't get me wrong. Koulibaly we've all spoken about. For me, he's the outstanding one. Upamecano. There's a number of players, and there's a number of good players, centre halves playing in Italian football. They are out there. United have to go and get the right one. I don't care how much he costs. You can go spend 20, 30. It doesn't matter as long as they've done their homework on him. And he comes in and he elevates that team and improves that defensive unit. Okay, we've got to be out of here by the next 4 minutes. I'm going to rapid fire these ones for you, Phil. Sky Italia reporting Spurs had a loan bid rejected for 26-year-old Torino and Italy striker Andrea Bellotti. Meanwhile, Spurs are apparently interested in signing Danny Ings, according to reports this morning. Either of these good as a partner/backup to Harry Kane?
They're both good players and definitely could get into most teams. But here's the problem. If you're Ings or Bellotti, you're going to be second fiddle behind Harry Kane, because Harry Kane's going to play every game provided he's fit. So Danny Ings has just got his career back on track by playing games at Southampton. It would make no sense for him to go and sit on the bench to Tottenham. Now, people will say he might get well looked after in terms of money, but he wants to be getting into that England squad for the Euros, and he's got to be playing regularly.
Quick fire here. Riyad Mahrez apparently has been in contact, or his representatives have been in contact with Real Madrid over a possible transfer. This is Footy Mercado reporting that Real Madrid are currently gathering information. Should Pep aim to keep Mahrez?
Yeah, I think so. Just given the way the season's going to be, there's going to be so many games. Mahrez's quality may not be the man for the really top games, but certainly a very useful player to have in your squad.
Gareth Bale to Manchester United instead of Jadon Sancho?
No.
Why not? Real Madrid paying half his wages.
Maybe play him as a left back. He can go back to playing left back.
I'd love to see Gareth Bale back in the Premier League. Remember, he was several steps above anybody else in the league when he left. And the impact he could have at Tottenham and where he brought them to. I know his interest levels seem to have dropped, but it'd be fascinating to see him at a club like United. Like, does he play left back?
No.
Maybe.
That was not going to happen. The Gareth Bale of years ago, now he's a different beast now. His injury record is horrendous. I don't think any team could take a risk. And in terms of the financial package it would take to bring Bale to the club, and to his injury record is absolutely horrendous. I don't think he can take that gamble.
Okay, did you want to say something about Spurs and their striker and Danny Ings? And
I agree with Phil, absolutely 100%. I can't understand people. Spurs have got to sign a top class number 2. No top class striker is going to sign for Spurs and play second fiddle. Harry Kane plays every game and plays every minute of every game. That's the unwritten agreement clearly he has with the football club. And that's a problem for them, because they're not going to be able to sign that top class number 2. Better off to do what they have. Son go in there, Murdo go in as a 2 or a 3 if they have to. Troy Parrott's not an option. But no top class centre half is going to sign for Tottenham Hotspur.
Steve-O was doing the game yesterday, the West Brom game, and he spotted that Darnell Furlong is the son of Paul Furlong. 28 years ago, on the opening day of the new Division 1, this was after the Premier League breakaway, so Championship, Paul lined out for Watford against Millwall, which included a 21-year-old Kenny Cunningham. And we have the graphic from this with the teams from that day. Watford goalkeeper Perry Suckling
I don't recognise that many of the names on the Watford side, but I do recognise, obviously, Paul Furlong, we were just talking about there. On the Millwall team there, Casey Keller was in goals.
Yeah, that's a decent little footballing side. I can't say I haven't got my glasses on.
Kenny Cunningham, Ian Dawes, Andy May.
Raiden right back. Raiden. Oh, a bit of Matt Dockage about me back in the day.
I'd say so. At 21, you were young, free and ready to go. Colin Cooper, Keith Stevens, Paul Holgrove.
Paul Holsgrove, yeah. Keith legend, Millwall legend, Keith Rhino, Keith Stevens.
John
Keith
McGinley
Rhino
at number
Stevens.
8. That's not the Scottish
lad, yeah. John
it is,
McGinley,
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Ian Bogey, Chris Armstrong, number 10.
Chris Armstrong, yeah. Yeah, tidy little side that we got battered on today. I had this conversation with Nathan, yes. I think it was about 30 degrees, like, you just couldn't deal with the weather like opening day of the season. But yeah, I've had it. When you get to the point where players you've played with, you start seeing their their kind of sons being making their debuts and making their way in the game, then you get a bit of an understanding of exactly where you are in life.
Look,
life moves on.
A topic for tomorrow, actually, or for later in the week, is greatest sporting families then, father, sons, father, daughters, because last night the ANA Invitational was on in women's golf, one of their majors, and Nelly Korda got to a playoff, and she is Peter Korda's daughter. So Peter Korda, Grand Slam tennis champion, and he has 2 daughters, Nelly and Jessica, both of whom are among the top 20-25 female golfers in the world. So to do a cross sport, so there's definitely we can come back to this later in the week.
Not bad, yeah, not bad. You can go off and do some tiger parenting there to your kids, Nathan. Thanks very much. Thanks to Phil and thanks to Kenny for joining us in studio. Great to have you back as well after all the quarantining that required. 10 o'clock this morning, that is your OTB AM for today. Coming up on OTB Sports Radio, Denise O'Sullivan is on Off the Bench from noon. OTB Gold by public demand at 1 o'clock. It is Mick O'Connell at 80. Paul Rice's History of Sport from 3 o'clock. Culture Hall of Fame is Gavin James at 4, and OTB Gold coming your way with Colm the Gooch Cooper at 6. That is our lot. The lads will be back tonight from 7. Stay tuned to OTB Sports Radio and the OTB Sports app. Good luck.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.